Chapter 401, Episode 76, Book of Revelation 3. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 85. We were left completely dazed at the same time after looking at those system messages. Just who is it? Han Soo-young threw out that question after somehow squeezing it out of her lips. No one could answer her, however. She asked again, "It can't be the kids going around causing accidents, right?" I retorted back, "You think they are like you? Even if they were still just kids, they wouldn't do something so rash with our situation being what it was." Sure, I was slightly worried about Gil-yong, but I looked at Anna Croft and addressed her, "Anna, I'm still searching." Although the page of the future had been ripped away, the events leading up to its disappearance should still remain, just like how a defective book would still need some time before it got destroyed. Chaos points are increasing. We can't leisurely wait any longer. The first one to fly out of the room was Yu Young-hyuk. Anna Croft's forehead was soaked in sweat drops as she endeavored to find the pages of the future. In the end, both Han Soo-young and I decided to move as well. "Anna, once you find something, let me know through voice projection." We left her behind and flew out of the cabin. Our companions had gathered on the deck after sensing that something was wrong. "Docu SSI, what's going on?" I conveyed the situation in the simplest terms possible when Jiang Hui-won asked me. "Some people are attacking their own camp." "Aang, why do something like that?" said Yi Jai-hai, while frowning to show that she couldn't understand it. "I thought everyone would die if those chaos points went up any higher. Isn't that why angels and demon kings went inside that thing? Can they be people with similar goals as our own? If that was the case, then they wouldn't have increased the chaos points at this point in time." I didn't need to explain in detail, but my companions seemed to have arrived on their own answers. "In that case, could it be?" I nodded my head. "No matter what happens, we must stop them. If we don't, something really horrifying will occur." "What kind of crazy bastards would, but why? Why would anyone try to speed up the destruction of the world?" I found it hard to provide a proper answer to that. However, there was this one thing in the star stream that worked as the universal answer to every single indecipherable situation imaginable. There are truly a vast array of fables in this world, you know. It wasn't only good and evil that existed in this world. Just like Kim Dokya Company that was neither good nor evil existed, there were people in this world chasing after those fables we simply couldn't relate to. Some would live to prevent the end times, but some would only live for the apocalypse. Tsuchachachachu. Probability was shifting unstably in the air. Sparks erupted in several places on the battlefield. Yu Young-hyuk, standing on top of the figurehead, seemed to have latched onto the location of the biggest arcs of sparks. "There are 5 in total, scattered now." He finished giving orders, and his figure disappeared towards the north. I quickly gave instructions to my companions. "Han Soo-young, you take the east. Yu Seung-yi, Jai-hai, and Gil-yong-yi, you guys take the south, please. Huey-1 SSI, please remain on the battleship since we don't know what might happen." "What about you, Dokya SSI?" "I'll head west." Sparks were exploding in all directions. 1 by the north, 1 by the east, 1 by the west, and 2 by the south. We don't know yet which camp started raising chaos. If it's done by the members of the same camp as you, don't fight them and call for other companions. The situation had flipped on its head now. If we had increased the chaos points by fighting good with good and evil with evil, then we needed to fight good with evil and vice versa. Only by sticking to the original rule of the Great War of Saints and Demons could we prevent the increase in the chaos points. Damn it, I'm really annoyed that our situation has changed so suddenly like this. I get why the constellations were so pissed off earlier. "We're going ahead." Yi Jai-hai and the kids departed first, and right afterwards, Han Soo-young and I also made our move. Her figure, as she dashed forward while scattering black flames about, was filled with wounds, both large and small. I spoke to her, "Be careful." She scowled ever so slightly and flew towards the east. This punk, I was only worried about her, but even then. You be careful instead, idiot. The midday tryst, arriving a beat later, made me feel a bit strange. Was I overthinking it when I found both Yu Jung-hyuk and Han Soo-young had changed a lot? Chaos points are increasing. Current chaos points, 86. I activated Way of the Wind and dashed across the air. As I was in the middle of Demon King transformation, the skill's accelerative force had become truly astonishing. I crossed the sky in an instant and arrived at the origin of the sparks. I began to closely scan the vicinity. In hiding was it. Corpses of reincarnators were strewn about on the battlefield, and there were a handful of terrified survivors that had fallen on their butts, looking at all the dead bodies. Without a doubt, someone went on to massacre the people from the same side here. Exclusive skill, Reading Comprehension, is activating. Attribute Scenario Interpreter is activating. Your insight that analyzes the situation by collecting circumstantial evidence of the incident has increased. I quickly read the fragments of fables scattered about. I was right about a massacre taking place here. However, I couldn't spot any traces of the culprit running away. Save us, Demon King Nim. 6 remaining reincarnators knelt down and began prostrating before me. I carefully observed them. Most of the 6 were wounded gravely, blood and fables continuously pouring out from their bodies. Except for this one guy, whose fable happened to be exceptionally stable. You! The eyes of the man slowly raising his head up were filled with a certain evil leer. I spoke while meeting those eyes straight on. Are you a seeker of the end? At that moment, the man desperately lunged at me, but I was already ready for him and easily evaded his attack before grabbing his neck. Kyak Kyoyaku. Exclusive skill, Character List is activating. As I thought, he was the culprit I was searching for, a Demon King's subordinate. There was no real need to peer deeply into his attribute window anymore. You've begun your actions already, but it shouldn't be the right time yet. The man with his neck grabbed by me formed a disgusting grin. The great apocalypse will soon come. All scenarios are already set in stone. The noble and absolute fable will come to reality. I recoiled just a little bit after looking at his eyes, glaring like a religious fanatic. Right, most of the seekers of the end were like this guy back in the original story, weren't they? They believed that there was only one absolute fable that supported this world, and that every scenario was merely the will of that fable coming to fruition. Kikekek. I heard the fourth waltz mocking cackle resound in my head. Without a doubt, these seekers of the end had no idea that the fable they thought they knew was actually a novel that I had read already. It's true that a LL are destined to be destroyed. There's no such thing as destiny. I recalled the countless regression turns Yu Jung-hyuk had lived. The great war of saints and demons, repeated for hundreds of times, and their conclusions were largely the same. However, that was only during the original story. Speak, how many of you have infiltrated this great war of saints and demons? Jiruk Jiruroka. Foams bubbled up on the man's mouth. Do you wish to free the apocalypse dragon? You do that, and everything will come to an end. Rather than reaching the end of the fable you've been chasing after, the fable itself will be over instead. The man didn't reply and simply cackled on. I sighed out, looks like you don't want to answer. Demon King of Salvation, has unleashed his status. The reincarnators around us screamed at the ripples of the status and quickly backed away. The man who received the brunt of my status head-on shuddered greatly, before blood oozed out from all 7 of his orifices. I spoke without opening my lips. Recite the list of your friends that are participating in this battle. Even under the threat of the imposing status, the man didn't fall into the clutches of fear. No, it was quite the opposite actually. Demon King of Salvation. He began forming an expression of sheer rapturous ecstasy. As blood continued to leak out of his lips, he began speaking in a voice of someone being saved. Kill me, hurry, please kill me. I couldn't figure out what the hell was wrong with this guy's head. In any case, I couldn't waste any more time here. If I couldn't extract the list from this guy, then I'd have to personally search around. I was about to smash the man's head in without hesitation, but then a message suddenly floated up. Members from the same camp have. Current chaos points, 87. Damn it, I forgot that he was also evil. Just as I let go of his neck, the fable leaking out of his 7 orifices suddenly increased in volume, and his body began rapidly expanding. And then he began smiling in a bizarre manner. Self-detonation sequence, was it? It was too late to dodge. But then, right afterwards, a streak of light flew in from somewhere and penetrated the man's body in a straight line. Quajijijijic. It was a spear made out of light so bright that it must have come from the sun itself. Inside this bright ray of light, the seeker of the end shuddered as if he was being electrocuted. The explosive power expanding outwardly was now being absorbed into the spear of light. He lost all signs of vitality in an instant and died after turning into jet black ash. I studied the fable of light being scattered all around me. Wait, didn't I know that fable already? You've forgotten to call for me on such a grand celebration. I'm disappointed, oh, demon king of salvation. The moment I heard that true voice, I figured out who it was. Surya. It was the supreme god of light, Surya. He used to be a constellation of Vedas once upon a time, but after the Olympus battle, ended up sharing a great fable with us instead. You've achieved an amazing level of status since the last time I saw you. I heard that you have defeated Indra. I simply got lucky. True, the absent-minded Indra might come across as a neighborhood dummy sometimes, but still, he's not someone you can defeat by relying on luck. Perhaps because he had left Vedas, Surya didn't seem all that perturbed while talking about Indra's fate. He scanned the fragments of the Seeker of the End. He ended just now and spoke. I was wondering why the great fable's state felt off, but now I see that Seekers of the End have shown up in this place. Were you aware of them? These bastards had infiltrated Vedas once before. Not even Vedas. Now that I thought about it, I heard somewhere that there was an internal conflict taking place in Vedas before. Maybe the Seekers of the End were responsible for that. Sujat. Sparks dancing around in all corners of the battlefield began subsiding at a visible pace. It was likely that my companions had successfully managed to suppress the situation. It seems that it's been taken care of, more or less. Maybe there weren't that many who managed to infiltrate this battlefield in the first place. Even though the Seekers of the End had made their entrance, this was a rather tame conclusion. But then, members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 88. What? I hurriedly scanned the battlefield but couldn't see a single spark exploding anywhere. Forget about the same camp this and that, there was no battle taking place at all. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 89. Even then, the chaos points continued to climb higher. A chilling sensation crept down my spine. Hang on, could this be? It's not on the surface. I heard Surya's words and reflexively looked up into the sky. More correctly, at the gray-colored sphere floating up there. Archangels and demon kings should be having a conference within it, yet it was rocking viciously to and fro, while an incredible amount of sparks exploded from it. Seeker of the End was in there too. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 90. The chaos points would climb only when those in the same side fought against each other. But if such a thing was happening inside that sphere, atmosphere of the great battlefield is beginning to change. Clouds gathered in the sky began spinning into a massive whirlpool. Aura of calamity at the hottest place in hell is opening its eyes. God damn it. Kugagagugu. Even Surya's expression had hardened noticeably. It seems that I've come seeking my own grave today. Right then, a message I really didn't want to see floated up. Chaos points have exceeded 90. Great fable of apocalypse is beginning to stir. Great fable, final dragon of the book of Revelation, is getting ready to tell its story. An earthquake erupted throughout the entire great battlefield. The indescribable despair I felt during the 95th scenario was reviving again. Episode 76, Book of Revelation 3 Fin. Chapter 402, Episode 76, Book of Revelation 4. Every constellation in the star stream has detected the existence of the calamity. Many constellations have fallen into a state of fear. As the surrounding atmosphere transformed rapidly, constellations enjoying the ceasefire all began repeatedly roaring out as well as speaking in their true voices. Some were panicking grandly, wondering what was going on here. Some sensed the status of the calamity and became scared. Some constellations began lodging inquiries to the Bureau, hoping to escape from this scenario. The bitter struggles of the stars trying to survive turned the battlefield into pure pandemonium in no time at all. The Bureau of the Star Stream is responding to the emergency situation. Finally, the Bureau was stepping forward. Seeing that the messages regarding constellations had decreased by a whole lot quite rapidly just then, it seemed that the Bureau also found the current situation rather concerning as well. The Bureau of the Star Stream has begun an internal meeting on the applicable issue. It was quite likely that even the Bureau didn't expect this great war of saints and demons to become this big. Well, from the get-go, the chaos points were simply added in as the extra spice for the sake of speedy progress of the great war of saints and demons. But then, that extra point system had surpassed the good-evil points, and it was even trying to awaken the apocalypse dragon now. If that dragon did wake up, then countless constellations would end up getting killed. In other words, it'd be the same thing as the number of the Bureau's customers declining rather precipitously. Even if the Bureau steps forward, they won't be able to revert the calamity, as if it never happened in the first place. I agreed with Surya's assertion. We were in the 80th main scenario. Even if this was the Bureau, they wouldn't be able to cancel the great fable. So now wasn't the time to place our faith in their potential response. In order for the apocalypse dragon to wake up, the chaos points need to rise up by another 10. Although it wasn't a lot, we still had some time. If we failed to prevent the release of the apocalypse dragon, then there was a very good chance that my companions would be killed here. What should I do to prevent that from happening? Of course, I could immediately come up with a method to do that. Eliminate the source behind the rise in the chaos points. The problem was that the source was hidden inside that sphere. Even if it's a seeker of the end, it shouldn't be able to hold on for long inside there. Through the ways of survival, I knew who was on the list of the seekers of the end. No one on that list was capable of lasting for a long time while inside that sphere. Not only were Metatron and Augars were in there, but the highest grade constellations in this world were with them, too. Even if they were to take their time, archangels and demon kings should have discovered the seeker of the end and killed it by now. With that, chaos points should stop rising up. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 91. It was around at that time that sparks exploded in the air. The sphere violently shook around before a portion of its side faintly spread open, and something began falling from there. There were 6 torn wings visible on her back. It was an archangel I knew well. I activated Way of the Wind and flew up in haste. The body of the archangel I caught was quite light. A certain fragrance wafted into my nose. Fables were falling like flower petals from the deep wound running across her back. Gabriel. Constellation, lily blooming on Aquarius, is looking at you. She was the Archangel Gabriel, who had experienced the 1863rd turn with me before coming back home. The constellation who fell into a deep pit of shock after learning that she'd betray Eden in the future. I momentarily wondered if she was the reason for the unfolding crisis, but I knew that couldn't be the case. Even in the original story, there was a very good reason to her betrayal, and technically speaking, You couldn't even really call what she did a betrayal either. Gabriel's lips moved with great difficulty. It was hard to hear her voice. I pressed her for an answer. What happened in there? Please talk to me. She looked up at my face with fatigued eyes, but then handed something over to me. It was her fable. Her trembling lips moved. Her voice couldn't be heard, but I could definitely understand the words being conveyed. Please save Eden. Gabriel's fable began telling its story. Metatron looked at the angels lining up by his sides, as well as the demon king standing on his opposite side, one at a time. They all seemed to be anxious. Also, their expressions displayed their failure at understanding how they arrived at their current situation. In the middle of all those faces, the oldest rival to Metatron could be seen. To think that we'd be in this place because of a single nebula, how absurd. It was the master of the second demon world, the ruler of the East Hell. While lighting up a thick cigarette, Agars asked his question. How will we decide on the victors and losers? Will we enter the third great war of saints and demons right away? Honestly speaking, I'm against it. Gathering this much probability again would be next to impossible after all. To start this great war of saints and demons, both Eden and the demon world had to swallow huge losses. Even among all the great fables of the star stream, the great war of saints and demons boasted an unparalleled scale. If this scenario ended in annulment, then the fable of good and evil they barely managed to scrounge up would scatter again, and both the good and the evil could end up on the road to extinction. Metatron looked up at the outside sky, faintly visible through the gray sphere. Flashes of lightning could be seen within the dark, gloomy clouds ominously gathering above them. Was it because of the end-of-the-world type vibe? He abruptly recalled an event that had taken place a long time ago. Agars, it's already been several thousands of years since the master of the first demon world had passed on. I don't have the time to leisurely reminisce about the past with you. Do you still remember that day? It was the day I inherited this abominable wall, so how could I have forgotten it? Wall that divides good and evil is growling. Ominous sparks danced around Agar's incarnation body. When that happened, a similar phenomenon happened around Metatron's incarnation body as well. Wall that divides good and evil is falling into a reminiscence of the past. A wall that was one but at the same time two. A fragment of the final wall that decided the good and the evil of the world. With that wall in the middle, the representatives of Eden and the demon world were staring at each other. For a long time, you and I decided on the good and evil of this world, didn't we? Just what was good? Even Metatron, the leader of Eden, didn't have the answer to that question, because good was simply a collection of countless fables, that was why. He read the fables of his predecessors, figured them out, and learned about good that way. And those good, rather than explaining themselves, simply pointed to other fables and spoke like this instead. That is not good. And that was how evil was created. Jiangyui, justice, Chinese letter had morphed into Jiangyui to define Chinese letter, and along with that, anger had been invented. And therefore we are not evil. That was how good was created. That simply dichotomy had managed to tear the star stream in half. The simpler and more unyielding the principle, the stronger its ability to spread out. Countless constellations jumped on the bandwagon of the principle of good and evil. You probably have no idea about how boring it can get trying to exist as evil in this world. Agars breathed out the cigarette smoke and continued on. It was you who forced the good and evil into this state. You erased the particulars of evil, and you also spread that damn promotion of virtue and disapproval of vice like some kind of a plague. Indeed, you bastard, are the original culprit who managed to break the fable of good and evil. It didn't really matter what kind of minute details, or whether sadness and pain existed within the scenario. What did matter, however, was the conclusion. The good judged and punished the evil. That was enough for the others to shed grateful tears and clap their hands. Without a doubt, such a time did exist. Metatron spoke up, But you also agreed to do that, didn't you? Back then, that was the only way for us to survive. The good stayed alive by punishing the evil, while the evil continued to exist by resisting against the good. And so, tens of thousands of years passed by like that. The division between good and evil became blurry, and justice definition had disappeared. The good and evil ended up becoming a concept of bored old men. No one welcomed the idea of promoting virtue and disapproving vice anymore. Drop. Agar's dropped the cigarette he'd been smoking on the floor, and as if he was stepping on an insect, squashed it to kill it. Through the repetition of the scenarios, the good has become a source of stuffy boredom, while the evil has become an antiquated cliché. I have to wonder, maybe it's about time that we stop with this foolishness. Agar's words prompted the Demon Kings to pull out all of their weapons. Metatron spoke again. If we fight here, then everyone will perish together. Evil has always been easier than good. Even if you all disappear, we will still remain. The world forgetting about good does not mean I have forgotten mine. Then prove it. Agar's eyes began burning up. We will no longer be the plaything of the promotion of virtue and disapproval of vice anymore. I am evil. I was born evil, and proving that you exist used to be the reason for my existence. And from today onwards I shall break free from that reason. The Demon Kings all roared out in unison. Their statuses overflowed as if to sweep away every archangel present at any given moment. But right at that moment, members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 83. System messages rose up in the air. The sudden spike in the chaos points caused the shocked archangels to exchange glances with each other. What's going on? It's the outside. Someone is slaughtering the members from the same side. Agars and the Demon Kings also became flustered, and in the middle of all this confusion, only Metatron maintained his composed chuckle. I've been thinking about this for a long time, but it seems that this is the only way forward. What are you? If you want to fight, then I'll give you one. However, what meaning is there for us to fight inside this place and end the great war of saints and demons? Who do you think will remember the good and evil that fought inside this tiny little sphere and met its ignoble doom? There was a hint of bizarre, creepy madness in Metatron's voice. Sensing that something very ominous was about to occur, Agars loudly shouted out, "Metatron, just what the hell are you thinking?" "My thoughts are as thus." As soon as Metatron finished talking, Michael, standing right at the forefront of the archangels, unsheathed his sword. Now that the strongest archangel had pulled its sword out, Demon Kings didn't hold back and unleashed their statuses while roaring out as well. And in the following moment, Michael's sword pierced into someone else. Mikhail. Eyes trembled softly in sheer disbelief. The person Michael had stabbed wasn't a Demon King. He began laughing. How regretful. I always wanted to kill Uriel first, though. Archangel Rhaegal continued to shake its head in disbelief, but eventually, it died on the spot as the fables poured out from its wounds. Demonic aura began boiling all over Michael's entire frame after he murdered one of his kin. A corrupted angel's powers would grow stronger by killing fellow archangels. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 87. Status that almost reached that of a myth-grade constellation exploded forth, and the massacre commenced in earnest. Angels that had no place to run hurriedly unleashed their statuses, but they couldn't even put up a proper fight before getting killed. Originally, there was a restriction placed on Michael that prevented him from attacking a fellow angel on the side of absolute good. Even then, if such a thing was possible, that could only mean. Scribe just why. Metatron's book was emitting bright white light. This slaughter was taking place under the tacit approval of Scribe of Heaven. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 88. The sight of hell itself unfolded as an angel murdered another angel. Demon Kings watched the proceedings like onlookers spectating on the wildfire on the other side of the river, shook from sheer terror, and hastily stepped back. Michael grinned brightly, and while wiping the angel blood off his cheek, spoke, "And now, good will forever be remembered. The most ancient good has begun its storytelling. The battle of saints and demons were, in the end, a battle between fables, and these fables knew better than anyone on what to do so that they would be remembered forever." Agar's, enraged beyond means, roared out, "Could it be that, you bastards, wish to revive the apocalypse dragon?" Just as it urgently tried to unleash its status, something dug deeply into its back, a covert, sneaky demonic energy that could even rival its own status. The most ancient evil has begun its storytelling. Agar's unstably wobbled about and looked behind itself. "You bastard, why? You said it yourself, haven't you?" The Demon King felt the sensation of the sharp claws cutting out its heart. Asmodeus, the Seeker of the End, was smiling brightly. "That evil is always easier than good." Gabriel's fable was really short, but more than long enough to explain everything. Hell had unfolded inside that sphere already. Run away, Gabriel, request aid from those people. And a small number of archangels, including Raphael, sacrificed their statuses at the last moment to send Gabriel outside the sphere. Definition of good and evil are rapidly changing. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 92. Kim Dakya, Yu Yunghyuk and Han Suyong had arrived by my side already. Their eyes were demanding an explanation. Rather than providing a detailed but time-wasting one, I simply spoke of the core of the issue at hand. It's Metatron. He was planning to wake up the apocalypse dragon from the very beginning. As if she knew what had transpired already, a big scowl formed on Han Suyong's face. That fool, I thought he knew what happened in the 1863rd turn. During 1863rd regression turn, Eden was destroyed by the apocalypse dragon, and Metatron was well aware of that. He must be believing that this is the only way to avoid their destruction. It was Yu Yunghyuk who said that. He continued on. If the apocalypse dragon wakes up, then at the bare minimum, this great war of saints and demons should become a fable no one will ever forget, even until the final days of the star stream. What the hell? What's the point of that if everyone is about to die? Not everyone will die. Some that manage to survive will end up remembering the good and evil forever. Even if both Eden and the demon world perished, the story would be different as long as the good and evil didn't vanish. Even if everything were to come to an end, the ideology would still be inherited. That's why. Countless constellations and incarnations would die, and without a doubt, the apocalypse dragon would be designated as evil. Then, the rest of the world would gather together to fight against that calamity. And Eden and the demon world would forever be etched in everyone's memory. Han Suyong shuddered uncomfortably at that out there show of will. Those crazy sons of bitches. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 93. I watched the chaos points slowly climb up and felt the helplessness creep in bit by bit. All of this was Metatron's scenario. Kim Dakya, what are we going to do? From afar, the rest of our companions, plus Uriel, were flying towards our location. I need to think. We had worked too hard to get this far. Tsujajajut. It was at that moment that a portal opened up in the air as sparks wildly danced about. Dakibis. Great Dakibai, Hyaju, empty throne has appeared in the scenario. Great Dakibai, Hyach, empty body has appeared in the scenario. Two great Dakibis, one wearing a formal black suit while the other, a white one, descended from the sky while scattering around dignified statuses. They must have come here on short notice because their crumpled, untidy shirts and ties were flapping around in the strong winds. They approached me immediately and spoke as thus. Demon King of Salvation, this dark stratum will soon perish, and it's almost a guarantee that you will die here. I figured that the Bureau would start making their move by now. I didn't expect Great Dakibus to personally show up here, though. If you came here to prophesize the apocalypse, Then I'm afraid you're a bit too late now. The system's been yapping on about it for a while, you see. The two great Dakibus looked at each other, as if they were taken aback by my composed reply. Just as the rumor suggested, he does possess a glib tongue. And that's why the king is so interested in him, most likely. Just before I could ask for a clarification on that, one of the great Dakibus broke out into a smirk, as if it was about to make an offer that I couldn't possibly refuse. "Oh, Demon King, let us get straight to the point. Give up on this great war of saints and demons." This great Dakibai laughed as if entertained by something, and while looking at Gabriel lying down on the ground, spoke again. "If you do, we shall take you to the final scenario." Episode 76, Book of Revelation 4, Fin. Chapter 403, Episode 76, Book of Revelation 5. The final scenario. Acting as if they already knew what I wanted, the two Dakibus wearing the contrasting black and white formal suits pressed me for an answer. "You must decide now. Die in this place or head off to the final scenario with us." The great Dakibus, Hyaju and Hyach. I knew a few things about these two great Dakibai siblings. Well, they did appear frequently in the latter half of the Ways of Survival, after all. Besides that, though, to think they would mention final scenario with their own lips. It seemed that the Dakibus were finally getting ready for the end of this world as well. Just as constellations and incarnations repeatedly fought to ensure their continued survival, the storytellers also had a story that they needed to convey at any cost. And the great Dakibus were getting ready for that final story. Final scenario, what are these two talking about? Han Suyong didn't seem to know. Herself from the 1863rd regression turn must have not told her of it, it seems. I recalled that version of Han Suyong, wearing the exact same white coat as me. That meticulous person wouldn't have forgotten about it, so it was more likely that her choice was deliberate. It's too long to explain right now. I couldn't really tell. However, she might have believed that not knowing would be more advantageous for herself in the third turn. I felt just a bit strange after recalling Han Suyong from the 1863rd turn after such a long while. That turn when I went to visit it was already facing its final battle. Did Han Suyong survive that battle? If she did, what kind of person would she have become now? I shifted my head to find Yu Yonghyuk staring at me. "Are you going to accept their offer?" "You're actually asking me that?" As if he knew it, he turned his head away. He looked as if he was rueful about something. If I had accepted the offer, then he might have lobbed my head off right this instant or something. Meanwhile, great Dakibus were still waiting for me. "Your decision?" "Well, I'm sure you've already guessed it. No thanks." "And your reason is?" "Because it's suspicious." "Suspicious?" "From the get-go, the offer itself is strange. Give up on the great war of saints and demons, and you'll take me to the final scenario. Can't you really see what's missing from that? You're a storyteller, yet your degree of understanding towards my fable is strikingly low." Great Dakibai Hyach looked at me in dumbfoundedness, before eyeing great Dakibai Hyaju. The latter nodded his head and spoke. "If you accept the offer, then we shall lend our aid to ensure the survival of every Kim Dakya company member present in this place." Both Yu Yonghyuk and Han Suyong looked at me simultaneously at that unexpected declaration. A path that would save everyone from Kim Dakya company present here, plus taking us right to the final scenario. Even if it's the Bureau, wouldn't doing something like that as you please tilt the balance of probability? That is something for us to worry about. This could be a once-in-a-lifetime chance, an opportunity to save everyone and reach the final scenario. An offer so tempting that one wouldn't even dare to think about rejecting it. Even then, my head was colder than it was ever before. "It sounds like you're in a really tight situation right now. Surely, me giving up on the great war of saints and demons can't be everything there is to your offer. I'll have to sign the stream contract with you guys in exchange. Am I correct?" The stream contract. a type of contract that I had with Bihyung once upon a time. The two great Dakibus formed surprised expressions. I decided to land another blow. In order to become the final storyteller, you are trying to take my fable and use it, aren't you? How do you know things like this? I'm not interested in your offer. Then your group will die here. We don't know that, didn't you say it earlier? It's almost a guarantee. In that case, there's a very low chance of us not dying. Have you not seen the calamity from the other world line? This time, it was my turn to be surprised. It seemed that great Dakibus were now more or less aware of the events of the 1863rd regression turn. The apocalypse dragon isn't some simple calamity that a single constellation or nebula can stop. I knew that. I knew how horrifying the status of that dragon was. Well, I did directly sense it back in the future world line, didn't I? Even then, I still smiled. I thought creating an entertaining scenario was the duty of the Dakibai. You should just get ready to start the broadcast instead. As if she was reacting to my words, Bu popped up in the air with a well-timed tada. But many constellations are astonished by your choice. A small number of constellations believe that you're insane. Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, is cackling away. Sponsorship Community's Big Whale has sponsored 300,000 coin for your ambitious spirit. As expected, thanks to the enormity of the situation, the incoming sponsorship amount proved to be rather sizable too. The great Dakibai glared at me with unreadable eyes for a little bit, before slowly vanishing from the view. You shall regret this decision. Their figures scattered like smoke, and with that, the certain method to save every one of my companions had vanished alongside them as well. Your decisiveness always surprises me. Even Surya seemed to be impressed by my decision this time. I looked at the unconscious Gabriel within my arms. Han Soo-young, looking at her, asked me a question. Kim Dak-ya. What now? What do you want? You thought about this long and hard before answering, right? It's not because of some cheap sympathy or a momentary rush of blood or something, right? I nodded my head. In that case, fine. A faint trace of resentment could be felt from her tone of voice. I spoke. It's okay for you to get angry. I did reject an incredible opportunity just now, after all. However, by not doing that. Yeah, well, sure, you have your reasons. Honestly, I knew you'd say no anyway. What, why? Han Soo-young's sigh-filled replies were followed up by Yu Young-hyuk. Because that's how you operate, you fool. Looking at him glaring back at me with his usual eyes, I instantly realized what these two had to give up for my sake. Right, this was how I lived my life, and it was not how Han Soo-young or Yu Young-hyuk lived theirs. Sure, this type of method does suit the stupid fable of Kim Dak-ya Company the best. I'm definitely recording today's events in my memoir later. Obviously, after surviving this place, that is. You better worry about what to do next instead. Han Soo-young and Yu Young-hyuk, two very different people. I realized something just then. I managed to get this far because these two lived on their own terms, respected my decisions in their own ways. I began thinking, with these two around, maybe not all hope was lost after all. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 96. Sparks were still flying around in the sky. The battle taking place inside that gray sphere should be winding down by now. The good and evil, planning to survive by driving this world to destruction, would soon reveal themselves from there. Han Soo-young asked, "Are we going to stop that?" Yu Young-hyuk shook his head. It's impossible to breach that sphere from the outside. What then? We can't stop the chaos points from reaching the 100 mark. The apocalypse dragon will revive. And with that, the first tail flick will begin. The first tail flick. It seemed that Yu Young-hyuk knew about that calamity. I recalled the prophecy of the apocalypse dragon appearing within the ways of survival. From the center of the hottest hell, a dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns will awaken. It will be a dragon among dragons, a leader of all dragons born within the center of chaos and the world's oldest hatred. The dragon will look at the heavens and the earth once before flicking its tail. That single tail flick will cause stars to fall and one direction of the world to vanish. Back in the 1863rd turn, I didn't get to witness that tail flick. Back then, the apocalypse dragon wasn't in the fully revived state. However, things would be different this time around. Yu Young-hyuk spoke in a resolute tone of voice. We have no other choice but to fight it head-on. Fuck, I knew you'd say something like that. Han Soo-young sounded resigned in her reply. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 98. Only 2 more points remained in the chaos points. I saw my companions rush over here from the distance. Ajasi. Dakya Hyung. I saw Shin Yu-seung and Yi Gil-yong, and Yi Jai-hai leading the battleship as well as Jiang Hui-won. Uriel was accompanying them, her expression complicated. She saw Gabriel in my arms and was taken greatly by surprise. Gabriel. I handed the wounded archangel over to her. I quickly looked at my companions first, as there wasn't a lot of time for a detailed explanation. Ajasi, is the apocalypse dragon really going to wake up? I nodded my head. As if to instill discipline, Han Soo-young began shouting out, "You all better be ready for this. This isn't going to be a picnic." When was it ever? Along with Yi Jai-hai's reply, the companions quickly finished with the preparations. Everyone, Han Soo-young, Yu Young-hyuk, Shin Yu-seung, Yi Gil-yong, Jiang Hui-won, and Yi Jai-hai all carried a hardened, determined expression. Finally, I shifted my gaze over to the face of the still unconscious Yi Hyun-seong. Members from the same camp have clashed. Current chaos points, 99. And then, the apocalypse dragon's imminent revival drew near. Many constellations are in a state of terror. Constellations of Starstream have fallen into a chaotic state. Nebula Olympus is getting ready for the calamity. Nebula Vedas is getting ready for the calamity. Nebula Hongik is Kugugagugu. Something from deep within the island writhed, causing the heaven and earth to shake violently. It felt as if everything was now enveloped within a gigantic flap of a wing. The surrounding view felt like it was precariously hanging on as if it was an ill-fitting block. Smaller fables had already started breaking down bit by bit. As if it wanted to deprive the names of all calamities that had existed so far, an enormous fable began waking up. Kim Dakya, the ones at most peril when the apocalypse dragon awakens are the constellations. According to the prophecy, that's right. And you're a constellation. The first tail flick would destroy a direction in the sky. Simply put, all the stars and the context for the modifiers found within the applicable location would be destroyed. Han Soo-young began smirking. Hey Kim Dakya, which direction were you again? East, or was it the west? If you are unlucky, I guess you'll be the first one to die. That could be true, so I might as well pray for my survival before I die. What bullshit are you spewing now? Wait, are you and the apocalypse dragon acquaintances? Although her tone of voice wasn't exactly nice, Han Soo-young's eyes were sparkling brightly, nonetheless. I decided to satisfy her expectations somewhat. You see, the apocalypse dragon isn't actually referring to a specific dragon, just like how the most ancient good or the most ancient evil doesn't refer to any specific constellations. The final dragon of the Book of Revelation simply refers to the great fable itself. Hang on, doesn't that mean? At this point in time, it's not been decided on who shall become the apocalypse dragon. Han Soo-young's jaw fell ever so slightly. Current chaos points, 100. Chaos points have reached the limit. Along with the chilling sensation traveling down my back, the whole world began to die in the jet-black color. The threatening aura breaking out from beneath, the surface began encroaching into the entire island. From the hottest hell, the demonic dragon palace is opening its doors. Blinding rays of light exploded out, and the surrounding space shattered away. Giant shadows began appearing from there. After excluding the outer god-level beings, There were still other monsters in this world that managed to get near the powers of constellations or transcenders. The peak of all types of monsters in the world. Gudohohuo. A dragon's roar, capable of freezing up the listener's body, resounded out. Shadows of the ruined cities seemed to fleet by, as the ancient dragon kings that had been forgotten under the lengthy period of time began waking up. Kuak. Constellations struck by the dragon's breath screamed as they turned to ash. Hundreds of draconic shadows blanketed the sky. The constellations of the star stream freaked out as they were subjected to the ripples from the vast statuses. Every single one of them was a dragon king, equal to the power of a constellation. All these countless dragons had shown up here, hopping to be selected as the lone apocalypse dragon tasked with destroying this world. Great Fable, final dragon of the Book of Revelation, has begun its storytelling. Great Fable, final dragon of the Book of Revelation, has begun selecting the dragon of calamity. I looked up at that overwhelming spectacle and spoke. We have a dragon among us, don't we? Shin Yuseung looked at me after hearing me speak. There was a dragon with thick metal armor covering its entire figure sitting next to her. First grade Dragon King, Chimera Dragon. Thanks to Shin Yuseung's diligent care, it had become strong enough not to get pushed around by any regular constellations. A dragon that was born in the demon world's paradise loudly roared into the heavens above. TL, that's what it says in the Raw. Han Suyong watched it fly up into the sky and asked me a question. You really think that guy will become the king? I shook my head. Sure, the Chimera Dragon possessed an unbelievable rate of growth, but it was still too early for the creature to become a viable candidate for the role of Apocalypse Dragon. Then why are you so confident? We still have one more, right? What, where? Han Suyong formed a rather dumb-looking expression. But then her right hand began wiggling violently as if it was responding to something. Right in the next second, the empty sky split wide open, and the pitch-black darkness exploded out from within. Dozens of dragons nearby screamed pitifully and fell down. The heavens flickered as if the darkness had overtaken it, and black bolts of lightning crashed down to the earth. Through the gap of the abyss, something began revealing itself. It was a dragon, covered in elegant scales seemingly crafted out of pure obsidian. A status that other ancient dragons couldn't even hope to match, eyes gleaming like the reddest of rubies. Every time its wings, seemingly carved out from the darkness itself, flapped, entrancing black flames blanketed the sky. I looked up at that life form, possessing the beautiful, streamlined shape, and spoke. Let's all pray that your sponsor emerges victorious. It was the existence closest to being the Apocalypse Dragon at this point in time. Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, has incarnated into the scenario. Episode 76, Book of Revelation 5 Fin. Chapter 404, Episode 77, Final Dragon 1. Metatron scanned the desolate, ruined conference venue. Demon kings and archangels wielding their respective weapons up until a short while ago were all lying still on the floor. The fable of good and evil was scattering away. The effects of the chaos points that broke past the critical point were now invading into the gray sphere. One of the angels, still conscious, reached out towards him. Scribe. Along with Pyogeogeog, Michael's heel smashed that angel's head into meat paste. He kicked the dead angel away before pulling out an archangel the size of a small child hidden inside its robe. The unconscious archangel dangled in Michael's hand as she was brought up in the air. Should I kill Raphael as well? It's a bit of a waste to let her go like this. If that's what you want, it doesn't matter if you let her live. The chaos points have been filled to the maximum already anyway. Well, in that case, what about that demon king? Metatron shifted his gaze over to the corner of the sphere, where a heated battle was still taking place. Agars and his heavily wounded body were there. Asmodeus and other seekers of the end were pouring out coordinated attacks on him, but Demon King Agars didn't show any signs of collapsing. Even though fables streamed down from all over his body, even though his two eyes burned in resentment like a dreadful phantom. While stuck inside the deadly battle, the Demon King continued to suck on his cigarette. Not just one, but several of them, in fact. Stigma 1 Siggy for prodigious strength LV is in activation. Stigma 1 Siggy for agility LV is in activation. Stigma 1 Siggy for magic power LV is in activation. That was Agar's Stigma, universal cigarette, at work. Its speciality, developed after living as a smoker for a very long time. A unique stigma for the Demon King that possessed the fable to overclock the incarnation body's abilities. Even after receiving the combined attacks of 5-6 Demon Kings, Agar's remained standing, prompting Asmodeus to say something in admiration. As expected, the renown of the ruler of East Hell wasn't for nothing, I see. However, how long will you be able to hold on like this? Agar's didn't reply, simply choosing to pull out a new cigarette and light it up. Metatron and Michael crossed the now-dead battlefield and approached the Demon King. Agar spoke. Metatron, you better think again. You won't be able to protect the good and evil in this fashion. What meaning is there in being remembered after everyone has perished? As long as it's remembered, it shall revive again sometime in the future. Revive, like your accursed corrupted angel. Michael frowned deeply. Demon King, king of corrupted angels, is unleashing its status. Michael's status crashed in like a surging storm, causing Agar's to back away while losing more of his fables. However, the Demon King's gaze was still firmly fixed on Metatron. What point is there in trying to carry on like that? That is not us. We reviving in that manner will no longer be Metatron or Agar's, but merely the scribe of heaven and the ruler of East Hell. That is precisely what we are, O ruler of East Hell. A certain everlasting fable was now flowing behind Metatron's back, fables that he had read, lived, and believed in. The most ancient good is smiling widely. This was the scribe of heaven, the one who recorded the good of the world, an existence who judged what was good and would become its leading standard. While looking at his oldest rival, Agar's too sensed the fable unhurriedly flowing next to him. The most ancient evil is tilting its head. That was the immeasurably lengthy history of evil he had pursued so far, a history of resisting the good, eliminated by it and being punished for it. At that moment, Agar sensed that the thousands of years of his life were now being summarized into a single comma. This flow would not end here as long as the ruler of East Hell was alive, and the scribe of heaven continued to exist, as long as they fought against each other and repeated their wars over and over again. Even if Metatron and Agar's were killed, someone else would become the scribe of heaven and ruler of East Hell. If such a thing is good and evil, then. Agar spat his phlegm on the floor and formed a bitter grin. I shall give up on evil. A cigarette flew up from Agar's fingers. It spun in the air while emitting dense smoke. Asmodeus hurriedly shouted out, "Stop him." The swirling, spinning smoke enveloped Agar's entire body. Stigma 1 Siggy for cowardice LV is activating. Grayish, murky smoke exploded as the attacks rained down. The smoke dissipated, and the only thing remaining on the spot was a single cigarette. The seekers of the end had no choice but to withdraw their weapons in bitterness. Metatron looked at the discarded cigarette on the floor. Thick smoke swirled in the air from its tip. His enemy was gone and only the good remained. Was this a sense of loneliness or a type of freedom he felt? Metatron couldn't tell. Someone trampled on the dying bud and killed it off. The most ancient evil is closely observing the new evil. He raised his head to find Asmodeus grinning primly towards him. What a miss that was. I was thinking of taking over Agar's wall, you see. Metatron looked at the Demon King and replied, You'll soon possess it. Whatever the case might have been, the intended purpose had been accomplished now. Current Chaos Points, 100. The Chaos Points were now maxed out, and the Apocalypse Dragon had entered the revival sequence. And soon, the apocalypse would begin. Conference venue is disintegrating. The gray sphere wrapped around the conference venue crumbled away bit by bit, and the corpses of the archangels fell to the ground below. Asmodeus asked a question, seemingly enjoying that spectacle in the meantime. By the way, will this really be all right? Metatron remained silent. Time to argue whether it'd be all right or not had long passed by already. He watched the angels falling and provided the most textbook-like reply he could think of. Everything is according to the will of good, in order to reach the most ideal black, the dearest wish of all constellations, as well as where the story of a star would come to an end. Asmodeus spoke, black. It seems that all constellations that seek it end up becoming quite similar to each other. You really do resemble someone I know. Your dispositions are completely opposite of one another, though. Just before Metatron could ask who that was, he heard the dragons howling, tearing through the sky. Guea. Dragons, easily numbering well past several thousand, were freely roaming around the skies to wage a bloody war. Explosions rang out seemingly endlessly. Dragons and their torn wings were crashing back to the earth. This was not the spectacle Metatron expected to see. The apocalypse dragon hasn't revived yet. What are you so surprised about? We aren't the only ones pursuing black after all. Asmodeus stared back at a certain man, looking up at them from the ground, and grinned brightly. Constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, is roaring out. The black flame dragon was indeed strong. It rose up like a meteor while ripping apart dozens of dragons blanketing the sky, and announced its presence through the display of its mighty status. As expected from one of the strongest constellations in the ways of survival, Han Soo-young became excited as her sponsor went on a rampage and shouted out while waving her bandages around. "I'm proud of you for the first time ever, Black Flame Dragon. Kill them all. Be strong, Chimera Dragon." Shin Yuseung tightly clasped her own hands and looked up at the sky with an ardent look on her face. Abyssal Black Flame Dragon's sense of presence is strengthening. Chimera Dragon's sense of presence is strengthening. Every time Black Flame Dragon and Chimera Dragon defeated their opponents, their statuses, e.d., normal usage, not statuses, also rose up higher. Seeing their spirited battle, even my heart felt like it was pounding away powerfully too. After studying the dragons for a little while, I signaled Yu Young-hyuk with my eyes. "Got it." He replied to my gaze and, along with our other companions, made their move. His job now was to get in touch with the nebulas near us before the apocalypse dragon made its move. And I too had something to do in the meantime as well. I observed each of the dragons flying in the air and thought to myself, this wouldn't be the first time the apocalypse dragon had revived. It was quite likely that the previous apocalypse dragon was also among the ranks of the dragons overhead. Several dragon kings have sensed your presence. Damn it. Kueya. I reflexively activated lightning transformation and defended against the dragon breath. A few dragon kings glared in my direction but then flew away again while tilting their heads. It was as if they had seen something rather strange. What was up with them? Not to mention I wasn't even a dragon. But then I heard a certain message. "You are eligible to enter the Dragon's Festival." What? Will you enter the Dragon's Festival? My head temporarily blanked out after that message suddenly floated up to my view. No, hang on a minute. I might be a constellation, but I was definitely not a dragon, so how come such a message? Why aren't you participating in the proceedings? Just when did this guy get this close to my side? I raised my guard up and turned towards the voice's origin. A remarkably beautiful humanoid whose gender was indecipherable stood there. Its hair shone in a bright reddish color. I couldn't sense any powerful status from it, but still, its outer appearance did possess a certain unexplainable mystical aura. A reincarnator. Could be. This island was home to a tiny number of truly powerful beings who were hiding their powers, like Yu Ho-seung, the one invincible fist. I asked you why you haven't participated yet. I'm not sure what you mean, but I lack the qualification to do so. Why not? Do you not possess the heart of a dragon? Only then did I finally realize it. Fable fragment, a young gold dragon's broken heart, is stirring. Now that I thought about it, my heart actually used to belong to a gold dragon, a fragment of a fable I absorbed back in the story horizon a long time ago. Fable fragment, a young gold dragon's broken heart, wants to participate in the dragon's festival. I was wondering why my heart was pounding away so madly since earlier. Was that the reason why? The reincarnator asked me again. If you're truly a dragon, you should really be enraged by this situation. What kind of a situation is this then? A situation where the great and noble dragons are being spent as materials for some scenario. Right then, my wildly beating heart suddenly cooled down rapidly. The reincarnator continued on. Good and evil, communicating the cycle of life. Inside the great themes of the star stream, dragons have continuously been exploited. If you're truly a dragon, then you must enter the festival. Become the final dragon that will bring the revelation to reality and contribute towards the annihilation of the world. And witness the end of the scenarios that have stolen your identity, your existence. I carefully studied the reincarnator. Good and evil, communications, samsara. If one was a reincarnator that lived for a very, very long time, it was possible to experience all those themes of the star stream. If one was indeed a reincarnator that lived for a really long time, that was. I pondered for a little while before replying. Not every story of the scenarios is interconnected by a series of misfortunes. Some things were discovered only because scenarios exist. You might not have been aware of it by staying in the Isle of Reincarnators, but without a doubt, scenarios are changing. I hated myself for saying those words, but still, I was being genuine with at least half of them. I could see Yu Junghyuk and my allies rendezvousing with other constellations. The mysterious reincarnator watched the same scenes as me before replying. Changing. How did the scenarios change then? Can dragons or monsters become the protagonists of the fables now? There are fables like that already. However, they must be quite unpopular. Some are rather popular, actually. Some are even from the past, too. I'm sure you've heard of them before, such as in the Song of the Nibelungs or the Legend of St. George. Dragons were never the protagonists in those stories. Several dragons in the air lost their way and crashed into one another before falling back to the earth. The reincarnator continued on. Dragons were always hunted beings, referred to as the origin of all evil, and portrayed as nothing more than pathetic villains who kidnap human princesses or hoard mountains of gold. When you think about it, it's a rather funny story, isn't it? Why would a dragon be interested in gold or females of other species? Those aren't the only stories out there. There are a lot of scenarios where dragons come out to the human world to have fun as well. For instance, dragons that polymorph into beautiful humans. Do you really think they are pure dragons then? I found myself unable to reply. The reincarnator spoke. Tens of thousands of years ago, dragons were being exploited in the exact same manner. In the end, every single scenario was meant for other species, for other constellations. As it continued to talk, I sensed an ominous status leak out more and more from its voice. Not one scenario has treated a dragon as a dragon. Dragons were always exploited, were chained to restrictions, and were seen as the scenario's target of subjugation. Probably, nothing has changed greatly even now. It was getting harder and harder to breathe. The surrounding air was shifting unstably. The status capable of tying a fable-grade constellation like me to the spot. The abyssal black flame dragon, roaring towards the sky until then, hurriedly began flying in my direction. I stared at the black flame dragon and spoke up. I'll change it. You will, but how? I'll make sure that dragons don't suffer that miserable fate ever again. Constellation, secretive plotter, is looking at you. The gazes of the stars were gathering on us. A massive number of constellations are looking at you. Many constellations are freaking out after seeing who is next to you. The reincarnator looked at me with emotionless eyes. Interesting. Its external appearance began changing next. It was polymorph, the magic often employed by dragons out to have fun. Tens of thousands of years ago, there was a dakibai that spoke to me of the exact same offer. It said that it'd create a world where dragons could become the master of the scenario. It felt as if everything in front of my eyes grew darker. All five of my senses didn't want to listen to me. My dimmed vision began shaking around uncontrollably as fables leaked down from my nostrils. Shin Yuseung cheering on collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. Blood was pouring out from Han Suyong's mouth and nose as she was staring at us in shock. Even as the tinnitus loud enough to rupture my eardrums roared on, her message somehow managed to enter my head. Kim Dakya, what the hell is this? My hands and feet were shaking. I fell down on my butt and tried hard to raise my head up. How could this even be called status? Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is urging you to run away. Constellation, queen of the darkest spring, is looking at you with an urgent expression. Constellation, father of the rich night, is. The boundless dragon voice rushed into my ears next. The dakibai that deceived me back then has become the dakibai king now. The sun vanished, and the whole world was now covered in something shadow. The dragon of the end times, the final dragon of the Book of Revelation, unfurled its wings of calamity at last. Episode 77, Final Dragon 1 Fin. Chapter 405, Episode 77, Final Dragon 2. The fourth wall is violently reacting. The prior generation's apocalypse dragon flew up and generated a storm of fables. My vision continued to waver precariously as I wobbled about like a scarecrow without a pole to hold me up. In the blink of an eye, the creature reached high up in the air and screeched out a mighty howl, seemingly killing every other noise existing in the world at the same time. The heads of the incarnation bodies exploded, and the constellations in the battlefield began vomiting out fables while covering their ears. Tsu-cha-cha-cha-chu. The parts of the sky where the apocalypse dragon flew by were torn apart to reveal a jet black hole. Other dragons flying around in sheer confusion ran away in terror, while some of them who didn't know their place rushed in only to become bloody sacks of meat after getting brushed by the apocalypse dragon's wings. In the center of that chaotic sky, the abyssal black flame dragon was waiting for the apocalypse dragon to arrive. Constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, is staring at its enemy. It roared out and charged at the apocalypse dragon. The two mighty creatures got into a tangle and began a deadly battle in the sky. However, rather than calling it a battle, it was closer to being fisticuffs between an adult and a 15-year-old kid instead. Constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, is enraged. It was several sizes larger than every other dragon, yet when compared to its current opponent, it simply looked like a little hatchling. You better not lose. If you do, I'm gonna kill you. Fables streamed out from Han Suyong's figure as she cheered for her sponsor. Her great fables were telling their stories for the sake of her sponsor right now. The most destructive apocalypse, the deepest abyss. I'll say all those words as many times as you want, so don't lose, please. As if to answer her calls, the abyssal black flame dragon spewed out a powerful breath. Other dragons struck by the attack fell like burning kites. It was almost as if the entire sky was covered in the black flames. You're indeed a powerful dragon. Before I went asleep, there was no one like you. Don't make me laugh, you geezer. I didn't descend to this place just to hear your K-Kondi-like rubbish. It seems that I need to fix your poor manners somewhat. The apocalypse dragon dodged the breath with a flapping of its wings and went on the counteroffensive. It was so fast that there was no time to even think about evading it. Shu Yuwu. The black flame dragon was quick-witted enough to dodge that, however. It literally transformed into a 15-year-old boy in an instant, and through the dragon voice magic, activated Meteor Strike. The apocalypse dragon was struck by the falling pieces of rocks and became enraged. Polymorph, you were the same as the rest of them. Screw you, you also polymorphed earlier too, geezer. That is not what a pure dragon should do. The black flame dragon reverted back to his original form and roared out, I will live the way I want to. Whether it's as a human or an orc, it's my choice. You seem to be a lacking candidate to represent all dragons. Sparks danced wildly as the battle of biting and slashing continued on. The apocalypse dragon silently absorbed the black flame dragon's attacks, and eventually, its jaw slowly split open wide. The latter began charging up its breath as well. A clash of a breath against another breath. Thick, heavy breaths made out of black flames collided with the apocalypse dragon's crimson flames. In the ensuing moment, the colors of the sky changed instantly, followed by the kind of heat that made me think there was a burning sun right in front of my eyes. Although spectacular, I couldn't stand there and admire the sight. Reincarnators that couldn't withstand the intense heat turned into piles of ashes, as the scenes of flames dancing entrancingly engraved themselves deeply into their minds. Great Fable, final dragon of the Book of Revelation, has selected its final dragon. The abyssal black flame dragon was the most eligible candidate to become the final dragon currently. But if you flip that around, it also meant that it was still not the final dragon. The victor has been decided in the Dragon's Festival. From below the churning crimson clouds, a creature powerlessly fell down to the ground. Black Flame Dragon. Its wing skin was on fire, and its body had suffered several tears. As it fell, its eyes were locked on me, conveying its words as if it was thoroughly unhappy about this outcome. So I guess it was too much of an ask, fighting with only one hand. I'll leave the rest up to you, boy. This development was exactly the same as the storyline from the original that I knew. The previous generation's Apocalypse Dragon possessed the power that rivaled a consummate-level myth-grade constellation, and that dragon would evolve into a calamity that surpassed far beyond the previous status this time around. Han Soo-young spat out another mouthful of blood and angrily shouted at me, Damn it, Kim Dak-ya, this wasn't a part of your plan. It's going according to the original story. What does that even mean? Are things going well or not? I heard Young-hyuk's message coming in from behind. I've summoned up everyone I could manage, Kim Dak-ya. Constellations were busy gathering right behind him. They were all staring at the sky with stupefied faces. Kugagagugu. The humongous frame of the dragon that seemed to have sucked in all the light in this world began gathering the probability of the star stream. Just what is that? The Apocalypse Dragon's revival was already set in stone. A scenario needed an incident, and this creature was that incident itself. As long as the star stream willed for an incident to happen, its revival was a guaranteed thing. Back in the original story, several varied attempts were made to stop its revival, but not one of them succeeded. There was a reason why I stuck around searching for the Apocalypse Dragon even though I knew that. Why I chatted to it regarding the fables featuring dragons, and even why the abyssal black flame dragon sacrificed its status to continue with the battle it was certain to lose. All of those were to buy us more time. Great Fable, final dragon of the Book of Revelation, has begun its storytelling. The smartphone inside my inner pocket began buzzing noisily and emitting light at that moment. The calamity from the Book of Revelation opened its eyes within the hottest place in hell. It seemed that the Apocalypse Dragon's revival was supposed to happen even within the final revised version sent by TLS 123. Dragons that lost their lives within the extremely difficult fable roared on, and the crimson season of the apocalypse in full swing has come knocking. The falling dragons cried out in sorrow. The countless score of them sacrificed to the fable and became frozen in names only after even their souls were ripped away from them, were paying their reverence towards their king. On the other side of the sky, I saw Metatron and Asmodeus. It seemed that the conference venue's battle had ended just then. Metatron spoke while looking up at the humongous body of the Apocalypse Dragon. You have finally come, O evil dragon of Harmageddon. the evil dragon of the great fable, Harmagedon. Although it was the symbol of evil once upon a time, even the most ancient evil couldn't bear the weight of this primal evil. And that very evil dragon was looking down at the constellations of good and evil in an aloof manner. O aged fables, it's now time to uphold the promise of Armageddon. The air exploded violently, and the apocalypse dragon's giant frame pierced straight through the atmosphere. An unbelievable amount of sparks danced outside the sky where the creature had disappeared. The main scenario is being updated. Calamity's probability has exceeded the scenario's limit. Scenario's difficulty is automatically being adjusted. Scenario befitting the calamity's difficulty is being reassigned. I knew that would happen. If I remembered correctly, the Apocalypse Dragon was the 85th main scenario's calamity back in the original storyline, and the Great War of Saints and Demons was the 80th. Scenario jump has occurred. Calamity's difficulty is abnormally high. Due to the excessive scenario jump, abnormal conditions have developed in your incarnation body. 89th main scenario is starting. Main scenario 89, Final Dragon of the Book of Revelation. Type main. Difficulty indeterminable. Clear condition. Defend against the calamity of the Book of Revelation. Time limit. Applicable scenario does not have a time limit. Reward. Great fable related to Final Dragon of the Book of Revelation. Failure, destruction of the star stream will accelerate. This scenario will be divided into different phases. Refer to the system messages for more info and prepare for the calamity. I calmly read the scenario messages. 0.89 scenario was it. The scenario's number was higher than compared to the original storyline. The thing was, the later it got in the scenarios, the higher the amount of probability being allowed. Meaning, the apocalypse dragon about to descend would be stronger than when it appeared in the original story. Calamity warning is ringing throughout the entirety of Starstream. Soon, the revived apocalypse dragon will start its actions. Every region within the Starstream will now be considered the location of the 89th scenario. SSI, we've brought them all. I looked back to find Jiang Hui-1 and Kim Dakya company, plus the constellations that followed us. Only a few hours ago, they were busy fighting each other. These were now our new allies that Yu Yunghyuk managed to rally together while the Black Flame Dragon and I managed to buy us some time. My apologies, we didn't gather as many as we thought. Dionysus scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. Constellations from Olympus stood behind him. The goddess of love and beauty, Aphrodite. The atrocious war god, Ares. The spokeswoman of justice and wisdom, Athena. The master of skywalk, Hermes. The volcanic blacksmith, Hephaestus. The pure moonlight's hunter, Artemis. They were folks responsible for creating Gigantomachia with us. I did call father and the fish uncle, but the lightning throne, Zeus, or the spear that draws the boundaries of the sea, Poseidon, didn't seem to have joined us. When looking back to the splendor the myth-grade constellations exhibited back in Gigantomachia, it sure was quite a regretful thing. This isn't going to be enough, right? If I'm being honest then, yes it is. Olympus was indeed powerful, but it was still impossible to stop the apocalypse dragon with only these people. If the first tail flick was exactly as described in the original story, then our current combat force would barely get to survive the first impact wave of that tail. And then I heard someone else's true voice. My old comrades say that they shall aid you, demon king of salvation. Blinding rays of light formed from the northern sky. Constellations of the nebula, Vedas, have incarnated into the scenario. Several constellations broke past the thick clouds accompanied by the rapturous flames and made their entrance. The moment I saw their exterior appearances, pages of the ways of survival flipped open all on their own in my head. I expected to run into them sooner or later, but I certainly didn't think we'd meet like this under the current circumstances. The god king of Yakshas, Kubera. The purifying flames, Agni. And on top of that, even the unending storm, Vayu. They were all fable-grade constellations affiliated with Lakapala of Vedas, alongside the supreme god of light, Surya. Where is the bastard named Apocalypse Dragon? We now have a chance to acquire a pretty decent fable after a long while. Indra's wounds were too severe and he couldn't come. This was only the beginning. Constellations of the nebula Papyrus have incarnated into the scenario. From the eastern skies, constellations of the nebula Guardian Tree have incarnated into the scenario. And then from the western skies, constellations of the nebula Asgard have incarnated into the scenario. Constellations of the nebula 12 Zodiac have incarnated into the scenario. One-time enemy constellations were gathering together in front of the star stream's calamity. Yu Young-hyuk, Han Soo-yong, and the companions of Kim Dak-ya Company stood close to me as the blindingly bright stars continued to incarnate next to us. They all carried tense expressions. There's no need to be so timid, everyone. We're one of them after all. For sure, the gazes of the constellations looking at us were different compared to the past. If the eyes staring at us back when Kim Dak-ya Company had been created were close to contempt and disdain, they were much closer to jealousy and envy now. Kim Dak-ya Company had reached this far with our own strengths, and again, we'd reached the final scenario with our own powers. After the constellations of the regional conflicts that hadn't yet entered the great battlefield joined us, the overall number easily surpassed 500. Unfortunately, there was a problem with the mentality of the newly joining folks. A great fable just because of a single dragon. What a profitable business opportunity this is. All of you scram. Our nebula shall hunt the Apocalypse Dragon down. Nope, that Apocalypse Dragon shall be hunted down by none other than us, Guardian Tree. Surya, will you give us a ride to that Apocalypse Dragon? Surya heard them yapping away and formed a dumbfounded expression. Have you all lost your minds? Didn't you witness what happened just now? We all saw the scenario, weird direction. It was the morning star goddess, Vakarine, who said that as she entered the conflict zone, it's simply not possible for one measly little monster to possess a status as ridiculous as that, Surya. Maybe you were in need of extra coins after exiting Vedas. We were not acti. It seems that the train's conductor is scared today, so us alone should start the conquest then. Not every constellation in the star stream knew what the Apocalypse Dragon was. The last time it revived was already tens of thousands of years ago. That was why. A certain myth would come across as just another story from the distant past even to constellations. The length of time was more than sufficient enough for those who survived the calamity, and those born after it, to forget all about it. Metatron spoke as if to warn them. You must all compose yourselves first. Acting individually is inadvisable, everyone. That Apocalypse Dragon is. You shut up and stay out of this. The whole great war of saints and demons, fable went down the drain because of your actions. As if it was waiting for this moment, the system message rang out once more. Final Dragon of the Book of Revelation has started its actions. Episode 77, Final Dragon 2, Finn. Chapter 406, Episode 77, Final Dragon 3. First Phase Alert. The first tail flick will commence 3 minutes from now. The first tail flick is the Apocalypse Dragon, Revival Calamity. The first tail flick will annihilate a quarter of Starstream. A quarter of Starstream would be destroyed. Quite literally, that was a bombshell of information. However, the constellations that read the scenario message didn't seem to realize the severity of the situation. A quarter of us will die, so the Bureau did have a sense of humor then. Docubus have been exaggerating more and more lately. Most of the constellations present here were more adept at watching the scenarios happen, rather than clearing it. They were beings that exploited the stories of others so that they could comfort themselves. They were Docuby's customers, and because of that, they believed the Bureau would never create a scenario that would annihilate everyone. Unfortunately, these people had no idea. No idea that certain stories in this world even turned the audience members into the subjects of the scenario, too. And these constellations simultaneously dashed towards the apocalypse dragon that was charging up its power just beyond the atmosphere. The great fable will be ours. Greed was so clear to see in their eyes. Final dragon of the Book of Revelation was the scenario that replaced the great war of saints and demons. If they managed to bring down the apocalypse dragon here, then they would acquire potentially the best great fable there was. Perhaps feeling pressured by their movements, constellations of the nebulas that were already present began dashing towards the atmosphere as well. Constellation, Morning Star Goddess, is unleashing her status. Constellation, God King of Yakshas, is unleashing his status. The first ones to take the lead were Morning Star Goddess, Vakarine, and God King of Yakshas, Kubera. Nebula, Guardian Tree, is allocating probability to its affiliated constellations. Nebula, Vedas, is allocating probability to its affiliated constellations. My companions watched the distancing backs of the constellations and became urgent themselves. Shouldn't we go after them too? We must never join them, I spoke in a resolute tone of voice. Excluding those jumping in like moths to the flames, the majority of constellations with many years behind them were standing still, just like us. They already knew the result of the upcoming fight. I kept a straight face and asked Metatron, who was wordlessly observing the situation. Metatron, are you going to create the sealing tool for the apocalypse dragon? The archangel quietly stared at me for a little while, before forming a warm, bright smile. Yes, of course. That's what happened back in the 1863rd turn as well. A great evil has appeared in this world, so we should try to save everyone, don't you agree? As if he had already forgotten all about the struggles to kill each other a few hours ago, Metatron's eyes were filled with an almost holy light. I'd been sensing that something was a bit off about him from some time ago, but I was sure of him being utterly insane now. But if that plan is successful, you'll definitely die, and with that, good in this world will disappear. No, it'll be I that disappears, not good. It felt like I was talking to a wall. I shook my head and turned around. I saw the abyssal black flame dragon that had shrunk to the same size as Biyu, and Han Suyong quietly petting it. The fatigued black flame dragon spat out a lick of small flame towards the sky. Han Suyong spoke, Kim Dakya. What now? You're still withholding something, aren't you? I flinched just a little before asking back, what are you talking about? No, well, it's just too suspicious. Now, normally, you'd start by giving us the information first. But why haven't you told us anything concrete with this scenario? She narrowed her eyes and glared at me before continuing on. You do have a way to win, right? I do. Oh, so you can give us your assurances, then. You aren't going to resort to another weird method, right? And what might that weird method be? Han Suyong drew a straight line beneath her chin with her finger. I grinned and replied to her, Don't worry, I'm not going to do that. Unfortunately, she did not look convinced at all. It was Shin Yuseung who followed up after that. Ajasi, then why did you activate that stigma? Stigma Sacrificial Will LV-8 is currently in activation. The unique stigma that I created was busying pumping more power to my companions while floating up a message in the air. Jiang Huiwen spoke, Can't you just switch that off now? It's been getting on my nerves for a while now. And why is the stigma's level so damn high too? Yijai also grumbled loudly. I spoke as if to make an excuse. I only left it switched on in order to increase your powers, everyone. Really, I'm not thinking of doing anything weird. This time, Yi Gilyong jumped in. But that stigma, it only comes on when you're trying to sacrifice yourself for your comrades, right? Ajasi, you're lying to us again, aren't you? Dakyo SSI, could you be again? Enormous amounts of statuses rose up from my companions, and that caused the constellations nearby to flinch and tremble slightly. Yu Yonghyok, watching us from a bit of distance away, was about to unsheath his sword, too. I hurriedly pointed at the apocalypse dragon. And no, hang on. Now isn't the time to mind something like that. Well, a really fun spectacle is about to start unfolding over there, so we should just watch that. The lengthy comet-like tails of the constellations were about to reach the striking distance of the apocalypse dragon. All those friends up there, they are going to die soon. Get ready, it's about to begin, said Yu Yong-hyuk as he unsheathed the dark heavenly demon sword. The creature's tail flick is divided into 3 different stages. Fitting for a powerful calamity, 3 separate shockwaves will reach us. 3 of them. Yijai-Hai's surprised question was answered by me instead. It's easier to offset the shockwaves the closer we are to their origin, and the first 2 can be defended against if we do our absolute best, so you don't have to worry too much. The really important part, though, was the 3rd shockwave. If we failed to defend against that, then every single one of us would be dead, and a quarter of Star Stream would be blown away. We could see the clash between the constellations and the apocalypse dragon in the far distance. The waves of light fired by Vakarine landed directly on the dragon's body, while Kubera's great saber sliced into the creature's back. It was around then that the dragon's tail made its move. First tail flick is commencing. First shockwave is being generated. In that moment, I couldn't tell what happened. Pure azure light exploded in the distance. I realized much later that the light was actually from the spark that had been condensed to an absurdly high degree. It was the electrical shock of destruction that became the storm of aftermaths itself after far too much of Star Stream. Probability had been gathered and spent in that one attack. That was none other than the first shockwave, created by the apocalypse dragon's tail. A measly little thing dares too. Kubera, resisting until the end, roared out, while the shocked Vakarine screamed loudly. Dozens of constellations that challenged the apocalypse dragon all unleashed their statuses at the same time. And then, something broke. Constellation Morning Star Goddess has been extinguished. Constellation God King of Yakshas has been extinguished. Constellation Deep Night's Wolf has been extinguished. Constellation. Indirect messages fell like raindrops. Stars in the whole surrounding area were exploding at the same time and turned into ashes. Yijai muttered in a dazed voice, "You say we can withstand that?" I had nothing to reply with, because it was also my first time witnessing the tail flick today. The electrical shockwave that grew even larger after burning away the constellations finally finished, getting ready to spread to the rest of Star Stream. And we stood in its starting point. This is insane, run away. Several terrified constellations turned around to flee. Unfortunately for them, that attack was not something they could outrun. I shouted out in my true voice, "Everyone calm down, there is a way to block that. Stop with your insane babbling, didn't you see that?" Either we use status of the same attribute to absorb the shockwave created by the tail flick, or we cancel it out with the status of an opposing attribute. That is, as long as we have enough probability to shore our efforts. The electrical shockwave's rate of spreading gradually gained pace. Now rushing in at a fair knock, the wave bared its fangs at us, as if to devour us all. "All of you step aside." A constellation stepped forward. Blinding arcs of lightning coiled around his figure as he raised a giant hammer, his star relic, high up into the sky. "I am the son of Odin, Thursday's thunder." Indeed, it was Thursday's thunder, Thor, whom I'd met back in the Gourmet Association. "I shall bury the apocalypse dragon's thunder right here." A streak of lightning from above crashed into the star relic Mjolnir. He sprinted forward with a vigor befitting a Viking, and without a shred of fear, threw himself into the apocalypse dragon's electrical shockwave. Su-cha-cha-cha-cha. Surprisingly, he managed to survive against the shockwave. The majority of the wave rushing in was being concentrated towards his hammer, Mjolnir. Like an electrical rod being showered by the lightning, his entire body writhed in pain. Every constellation of Asgard was lending him probability. Oh! Not too long afterwards, Every blood vessel on Thor's flesh bulged, and his bloodshot eyes began to pop out from their sockets. His statue-like muscles were scorched black as well. The first shockwave was not the tail flick itself, but merely a byproduct of that action, yet such a measly thing was utterly, horrifically killing a fable-grade constellation. Uea. Just as Thor could no longer endure and was about to let go of his hammer, someone reached his side and grasped it together with him. I was never interested in the myths of Northern Europe before, but who knew? You aren't so bad. He was someone completely unexpected, actually. Thor freaked out and roared. Let go. This hammer is not a relic that someone like you can touch. Besides, you can't even handle lightning. Actually, I can, just a little. My old man is a god of lightning, you see. He was the successor to the lightning throne. It seemed that, after Zeus had left, Dionysus had become Olympus' successor. The only one among them who could inherit the status of lightning was Zeus's descendant after all. Fable Carnival of Lightning has begun its storytelling. A fable that I could have inherited once upon a time was running amok within Dionysus's entire figure. He gulped down a mouthful of wine from the flask on his hips and let out a cry in exhilaration. Qa, now that's good. Even though he was being burnt alive by the lightning, he still formed a hearty smile. Asgard and Olympus were cooperating, and the two managed to endure thanks to the powers of fables their allies sent their way. Sadly, though, it couldn't last long. The status of the apocalypse dragon crashing down grew even bigger than what the two nebulas had combined. Seeing this, Surya moaned in shock. If only Indra was here. I never thought that I'd miss that village idiot. Indeed, even back in the original storyline, the first shock wave was neutralized by the efforts of the three gods of lightning. But then Kim Dokya Company ended up defeating Indra, and that meant that one of the three gods was now missing. Isn't there anyone who can deal with lightning? I wasn't planning to step forward now, but there was no other choice. I shall help. You have activated Demon King transformation. I was not a constellation of lightning, but I could use something fairly similar to that. Fifth bookmark has been initiated. Exclusive skill, Lightning Transformation LV 23 plus 13, has been initiated. Your current physical constitution is different from that of the applicable character. Your status has overcome the physical constitution penalty. The pure, untainted white light of inner energy circulated around my body. While scattering blinding rays of electrical lights, I joined Thor and Dionysus. Great Fable, Demon World Spring, has begun its storytelling. Great Fable, Torch that Swallowed the Myth, has begun its storytelling. The two great fables supported me as the storm of electricity pounced on my body. Dionysus said that this was exhilarating. Yup, he was definitely out of his mind. It's quite tolerable after a drink or two. Would you like some? Dionysus said those words, his entire lower half scorched black now. Thor, now resembling jet black charcoal, cackled from the side. Demon King of Salvation, looks like we'll die together in this place. Dying together with you might go on to create a pretty good story, indeed. Let us become a fable passed down through generations together. HMPH, will that fable be Asgard-S or belong to Olympus? Let's stop with the inane banter and concentrate. Mind-numbing pain rushed in from the palm of my hands. Thor, Dionysus, and I stood against the waves of electricity like a levee, and the first shockwave's encroaching speed gradually lessened. Somehow we needed to withstand this, just a little bit more, a bit more. Unfortunately, the speed at which we were being forced back was still much faster than the rate that the shockwave's speed decreased. Dionysus cried out, "Damn it, it's going to overflow." If the electrical energy was discharged like this, then all of our comrades behind us would be dead. We knew this, yet we had no way of stopping the shockwave's march. Just before I could shout out to them, telling them to evacuate, someone's hands supported our precarious embankment from behind. There was another god of lightning left. Well, there were quite a few beings capable of dealing with lightning in the fables scattered around the world, so, however, I couldn't immediately think up of anyone. On top of that, the rate of absorbing the electrical shock far surpassed not just my own, but both Thor's and Dionysus as well. Just where did a constellation like him? It seems that you were negligent with your training, judging from your inability to withstand this level of electrical shock. The moment I heard those words, a hollow chuckle left my lips. Thor was taken back greatly and he quickly asked a question. Who might you be? I've never seen a constellation like you before. Those words caused the great, noble status to waver, as its owner began emitting auras of rage. People would often say that a handsome man's face was on the smaller side. In that case, there would be no one in the world more good-looking than this man right here. I'm not a constellation. I stupidly had forgotten all about him. I had forgotten that the one who could handle electrical energy the best in Starstream was not a constellation, but this man. As his azure-colored hair scattered in the air, his own pure, untainted white electrical energy exploded forth. I am Kyujo's Rodgram, the teacher of this lazy pupil. Episode 77, Final Dragon 3 Finn. Chapter 407, Episode 77, Final Dragon 4. The first shockwave gradually petered out after Kyujo's joined us. The difference between 3 lightning-related constellations working together and 4 was rather noticeable. Not only that, but a portion of constellations also lent us their probability after Kyujo's showed up, and for the first time ever, our own probability surpassed the Apocalypse Dragon's shockwave. Woo! Scorched black by the electrical wave, Thor and Dionysus began roaring out as if they had gone half-mad. The latter had drunk such a large quantity of wine that his face was completely red, even though the rest of his body remained jet black. Booze is going down so smoothly, it's so amazing. Now I'm really curious about the taste of Olympus-label booze. Give me some. By the time the storm of aftermath for the first shockwave drew to a close, the 2 constellations became completely drunk out of their minds. Kyujo stared at them with criticizing eyes before asking me, "My disciple, are these fools your comrades?" "No, total strangers. First phase has concluded. Congratulations, you have safely negotiated the first shockwave of the first tail flick." "We did it. We managed to withstand that damn tail flick's first hurdle." I looked behind me, Evrian. I couldn't continue on, because a desolate, ruined landscape greeted me, with a sea of corpses burnt by the electrical waves filling it up. Some of them were swept up by the electrical energy we couldn't hold back, while some of them died after their incarnation bodies exploded, unable to deal with the storm of aftermath taking place nearby. The 500-plus constellations were reduced to less than half that number through just one encounter. What an utterly fraudulent death toll that was. Could I even claim that we managed to endure when it was like this? It was just the first phase, so what would we do about the second and the third one? I raised my head and saw the messages from the stars brightening the night sky as if they were losing their minds. The absolute majority of constellations are stunned by the difficulty of this scenario. Many constellations are lodging complaints at the Bureau in regards to the applicable scenario's probability. A portion of constellations are arguing that this scenario cannot exist. The majority of constellations are requesting for the scenario's cancellation. Scenario's cancellation, was it? What a funny thing this was. They're still being idiots daydreaming about stuff like that. Applicable scenario cannot be cancelled. All constellations within the applicable scenario's area are urged to prepare for the next phase. No, the apocalypse would carry on. While the messages from the constellations freaking out continued on, the baptism of sponsorship messages also rained down from the other side of the sky as well. Constellation, Lightning Throne, is looking closely at you. Constellation, Spear that draws the boundaries of the sea, is glaring at you. Constellation, Great Mother God who created man out of earth, is getting interested in the fable you might earn. Final scenarios constellations are focusing on you. Final scenarios constellations are enjoying your actions. 3,000,000 coins have been sponsored. The constellations of the final scenario, including the likes of the lightning throne Zeus, the spear that draws the boundaries of the sea Poseidon, and even the great mother god who created man out of earth, Nuwa. The existences lording over the top stratosphere of Starstream, who didn't participate in this scenario, but didn't feel threatened by the unfolding events from the get-go, were there at the final scenario. The location for that scenario was excluded from the first Tailflick's area of destruction. Even the destruction of their fellow constellations was nothing more than a type of entertainment to those on the cusp of reaching the end of this world. Second phase will commence 10 minutes later. A 10-minute interval was it. I breathed a sigh of relief and looked back at Kyuji's. I sensed that his status had grown even greater than before. You must have reached another enlightenment, master. It seems that you're now at the level to discern that, at least. Kyuji's complaining voice sounded thorny. Not only were his looks enough to slap Yu Younghyuk's face silly, but even the way he spoke slapped the latter silly, too. Yijihai sprinted to where we were and began shaking me by the shoulders. Ajasi, I thought we'd end up as grilled squid, you know. And why did this kid have to go and use that kind of figure of speech? Kyuji's grandpa, where's my grandmaster? Didn't she come with you? The Breaking the Sky Saint has some matter to take care of first, so she'll arrive later. He replied in a cold tone of voice and peered at me from the corners of his eyes before turning his head away. I thought that my disciple would have been half dead by now and came in a hurry, but I see that he's far healthier than I hoped. I couldn't tell whether he was rueful or relieved from his tone of voice. If you arrived any later, never mind half dead, I'd have been really dead, you know. Let's not worry about that, though. We need to get ready for the second phase. As if he was waiting for it, Yu Younghyuk approached us as soon as my words ended. According to the tale of Harmagedon passed down, the attribute for the second shockwave is intense heat. The apocalypse dragon's tail in the far-off distance was visibly getting red-hot. Although it looked to be moving at a very slow speed from here, the truth was that tail was vibrating at a scarcely believable speed right now. That intense friction heat was powerful enough to distort the axis of space-time itself. Shin Yuseung grasped my jet-black scorched wrist and spoke, Ajasi, about the next phase. The moment I saw the determined eyes of both her and Yi Gil-yong, I understood what they wanted to say. But Yu Younghyuk buted in first. You two must stay back. That cold-sounding declaration caused the two kids to immediately lash back. Why, we're also Kim Dakya company, you know. What do you know, you sooty bastard? I wasn't asking you anyway. Yi Gil-yong's provocation was met with Yu Younghyuk's emotionless reply. This isn't the issue of your willingness, but effectiveness. You two do not possess any stigma or skills related to fire. In order to cancel the shockwave, we needed the statuses of a similar attribute. Unfortunately for Shin Yuseung and Yi Gil-yong, though, they didn't possess any skills related to the fire-type attribute. Gil-yong's shoulders trembled as if he was furious. He eventually shouted out, in that case, you also can't fight then. You don't have stuff like that either. But I do. The corner of Yu Younghyuk's lips curled up as he lifted up his sword. And in the following second, the blade of the dark heavenly demon sword was enveloped in a fire-type sword aura. Character Yu Younghyuk has activated Furious Flame God Blade LV. Yu. I gently patted the tearful Yi Gil-yong's shoulders. As stated clearly in the original storyline, Yu Younghyuk possessed almost every attribute there was. Hey, now that I thought about it, this guy also possessed lightning-based attribute, so why didn't he lend a helping hand earlier? Yu Younghyuk was glaring at me with his narrowed eyes. Have you forgotten how you pleaded with us not to aid you? I did that, didn't I replied, before flinching just a little. This guy, I haven't said anything yet, so how did he read my mind? I shall announce the constellations that will partake in the next phase. Yu Jung-hyuk, already finding himself in the middle of the constellations, began his selection process. A calamity, unprecedented in the history of the star stream, had come knocking, and for the first time ever, constellations were exposed to the threat of their complete death. Under Yu Jung-hyuk's command, these headstrong and proud constellations found themselves positioned on the front line one by one. I've heard that you're a regressor. Does that mean you have information on this situation? Of course I do. A faint trace of trust could be seen within the eyes of the constellations. The more urgent the situation was, the more valuable information would get. The rumors of Yu Jung-hyuk doing the rounds among the constellations were helping his attempt to instruct them. He only took the blink of an eye to finish distributing the fighting force, standing in the middle of the front line himself. Han Soo-young watched him do that and muttered softly, "Well, he's the conquering king, all right." Jiang Huiwen next to her nodded her head while polishing her sword. "Well, he does have some parts that we have to acknowledge, that's for sure. It pains me to say it, but after Han Soo-young Corporation, Yu Jung-hyuk Company might be the next most suitable alternative for our nebula's name. Before the top representative changes, we should create a labor union first, though." "A labor union, is it?" Han Soo-young smirked deeply and looked at Jiang Huiwen. They were working together in the advance party for the intense heatwave. The black flame of the black flame dragon contained the status of red flame, and Uriel, Hellfire, was permeated with the strength of Hell's flames. So, it was the same thing as these two being the strongest main force in the current frontline. I never figured that we'd ever get to fight side by side. It's the same story for me too. Jiang Huiwen blew away the specks of dust clinging onto her sword of judgment. That hard blade with its dull luster, Han Soo-young had clashed against that blade on the stage of Proof of Stars a long time ago. Afterwards, she never had the chance to talk to Jiang Huiwen like this, one-on-one. Well, they didn't really have anything to say to each other, and she wasn't really talented when it came to that sort of conversation, so that couldn't be helped. Even if that was the case, she still had to ask Jiang Huiwen for an explanation this time. "By the way, why are you still lugging around that?" "Ah, this." Jiang Huiwen looked at the huge luggage on her back and formed a bitter smile. Yeonseong could be seen wrapped tightly on a cross made out of steel frame. "This is the only way that I can protect him." "But he looks as if he's already met his noble end, though. Where did you even find a cross, anyway?" "My sponsor, Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is nodding her head in satisfaction. You know, this sight comes across as a bit blasphemous somehow. Is Uriel really an angel?" "Well, even a demon king is like that, so it's fine." The two women's gazes shifted towards the back of the ranks almost simultaneously. Kim Dak-ya was among those constellations sitting outside the ranks. With a melancholic look on his face, he was pressing the ground with his finger. It was as if he was scribbling something down there. Han Soo-young spoke first. "Is he writing a will?" "That might be. I mean, doesn't he make that sort of a face before he's about to sacrifice himself?" Jiang Huiwen gritted her teeth as if she had had enough already. "If he goes and does something like that again, I'm really going to." First tail flick is recommencing. It was then, a humongous explosion of light could be seen at the far front of the battle line. "Get ready." Along with Yu Jung-hyuk's signal, constellations all gripped their weapons tightly. Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is issuing clear warnings. The wave of the intense heat burned brightly. After seeing those sun-like red flames that burned away everything in the heavens and on earth without discrimination, Han Soo-young spoke in a fed-up voice. "God damn it, if only my black flame dragon wasn't defeated." Constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, says he has underestimated his opponent. Constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, says that if he had started fighting with both of his hands. "Will you just shut up?" And then, the intense heat wave swallowed the constellations up. Kagagagugu. Stuck in the middle of the flooding wave of flames, Han Soo-young desperately activated black flame. The black flame dragon's status permeated her entire being, and the heat from the wave was rapidly absorbed into her body. It felt as if her head was blanking out and all the fables she'd lived so far were melting away. Kim Dakya was enduring against something like this. The fact that Jiang Huiwan was next to her proved to be a small consolation. No, not just her, but constellations who were second to none when it came to wielding fire were guarding her sides, too. The one who perhaps best represented that was Purifying Flame, Agni, over by the very front of the line, defending against the crashing wave of flames by himself. He'd be one of the strongest constellations within Vedas after one excluded the 3 myth-grade gods of that nebula, and as befitting a powerful constellation, he was pouring out so much power that his entire being was now lit up on fire as he withstood the intense heat wave. Hell, even the whites of his eyes were showing. Hey, that idiot is actually burning to death. Along with the noise of Tadat, Agni's body began crumbling away in ashes. That served as the starting point, and the screams of constellations reverberated from everywhere next. Quack! Their line was being forced back with a speed far quicker compared to when pushing back against the electrical wave. Constellations melting down from the intense heat wave writhed around in pain, while the advancing flames used them as their firewood to increase the intensity of their heat. They were losing. Han Soo-young's eyes, currently being protected by status, felt as if they were now going blind. The heat nearing her nose made it difficult to even breathe. Before she had noticed it, the intense heat wave had reached right before her. Jiang Huiwan breathlessly cried out, "Uriel!" Uriel's and the black flame dragon's powers increased, and a momentary defensive wall was created. The intense heat wave seemed to waver just for a second there, but then it began forcing back their statuses once more, bit by bit. Han Soo-young's and Jiang Huiwan's shoulders were pressed against each other as they continued to endure. Energies from both black flame dragon were gradually seeping away, as well. From the beginning, the dragon had already spent a lot of its strength fighting in the Dragon Festival, and due to the partial destruction of Eden, Uriel was unable to receive her share of probability, and so her condition was about the same. Nebula, Vedas, is withdrawing a portion of their probability. Nebula, Papyrus, is withdrawing a portion of their probability. Even the nebulas supplying them with probability began withdrawing one by one. But that was only obvious. If they were to spend more probability than what their great fables could afford, then even if they managed to earn a new great fable now, they would still be losing out at the end anyway. From their perspective, getting annihilated by the apocalypse dragon or by the storm of probabilities aftermaths was just about the same now. Through her blood-stained, dried-up lips, Han Soo-young spoke. "Damn it, I shouldn't have been worried about Kim Dakya." Worried about me. For a moment there, she thought she felt a certain sense of refreshment enter her, and soon, a familiar power enveloped her and Jiang Huiwan's backs. Han Soo-young grumbled loudly, "Are you finished writing your will?" "What are you on about? Nebula Kim Dakya Company is supplying you with probability." In Star Stream, probability was one's wish, a dream, a desire not to give up until the end on the story that everyone else had given up on already. The ardent wishes of a small number of people who hadn't given up on the scenario were supporting them now. Han Soo-young bitterly smiled. "How foolish, why didn't you all run away then? Where can we even go anyway?" Yijai advanced forward while firing the cannons of the turtle dragon. The battleship, built with futuristic technology and its hard exterior, blocked the intense heat wave instead of Jiang Huiwan's and Han Soo-young's crumbling bodies. Great fable, next city is crumbling away. Yijai writhed in pain as she tried to endure against the flames all by herself. No matter how powerful Turtle Dragon was as a fable weapon, it was never designed for this sort of situation. Han Soo-young cried out in despair. "Damn it, doesn't matter who it is, just hurry up and help. There are lots of you with fire attributes, right?" Unfortunately, not a single one in the night sky replied to her. The absolute majority of constellations are watching the nebula Kim Dakya Company. The absolute majority of constellations are evacuating from the intense heat wave. Constellations of the final scenario are watching this scenario. Weak constellations were too occupied with running away, while the truly strong ones seemingly didn't want to miss this grand show. Is it really only us? Turtle Dragon's external layer melted away, and Yu Yonghyuk quickly carried the unconscious Yijai Hai on his back as he continued to activate Furious Flame God Blade. The intense heat wave that managed to burn everything away in the surroundings began flooding their position once more with a scale they couldn't possibly defend against this time. Not even Uriel, not even the Black Flame Dragon, not even the Maritime War God, not even Kyejios and that Yu Yonghyuk. Thank you for holding on until now. And then Kim Dakya spoke up. It's fine now. I was confused a bit earlier. Well, it was my first time doing it, that's why. Before Han Suyong could ask what he was talking about, something suddenly rose up from the ground behind her. That was where Kim Dakya had been squatting earlier. There was a hexagram of darkness spread out widely on the ground, and something was being summoned through that very hexagram. Quack-quack-quack-quack. A gigantic frame began blocking the incoming heatwave head-on. Han Suyong's brows rose up high. Pluto. That something turned out to be the giant soldier Pluto. However, it was no ordinary Pluto either. There was no way that it'd be able to withstand that intense heat even if it was the giant soldier. Qea. The one riding inside Pluto was blocking the wave all alone, when various Fable-grade constellations had failed to endure it previously. Han Suyong saw the chilling, dangerous-looking scythe held by the giant soldier and instantly figured out who it was. The thing was, the Fable weapon Pluto didn't originally belong to Kim Dakya. Great Fable Underworld has begun its storytelling. Even if it was a story where only a handful wished to see, the scale of probability changed depending on who that handful of people was. And the existence that appeared now was a grand being who could handle such probability all by himself. Constellation, father of the rich knight, has incarnated into the scenario. He was the constellation that protected Olympus' hottest hell. The myth-grade constellation, Hades, had descended on the battlefield with Underworld in tow. Episode 77, Final Dragon 4, Finn. Chapter 408, Episode 77, Final Dragon 5. The dark but warm current of air approached us from behind. Since I knew whose status that was, a subtle little grin automatically formed on my lips. To make Underworld, be responsible for the probability needed for summoning. I'm still at an age where I'd like to rely on my parents, you see. I heard that youths of the Korean peninsula become independent early in their lives, but I guess I was wrong. I recalled the day I left the relative's place for lodging in a hostel. I was 17 back then. I shrugged my shoulders and smiled. Well, a young man like myself is needed to keep the balance, you know. Constellation, Queen of the Darkest Spring, has incarnated into the scenario. Abruptly, a corner of my heart began tingling just a little. I ended up remembering the empty spots reserved for my parents during school events, back when I was still a student. I always wondered how my friends felt back then. What did it feel like, having someone fill up those spots, having someone who'd come to you when you called out to them? Constellation, Queen of the Darkest Spring, has unleashed her status. And now, I thought I could finally understand what they felt back then. Persephone stood beside me, and while looking at Hades blocking the intense wave of heat, spoke. But we agreed that it's my turn to ride Pluto this time, him and his short fuse. The heat blocked by Hades spread out like ashes in the air. Perhaps realizing that a powerful opponent had appeared, the Apocalypse Dragon strengthened its momentum as well. Qea. Pluto at the far front was getting slowly pushed back as it continued to deal with the intense heat. That made sense, though. Hades was yet to fully unleash his status. Constellation, father of the rich knight, is wobbling as he looks back at his wife. I told you that it'd be not possible with you alone, did I? Constellation, father of the rich knight, is looking at his wife with an unfortunate expression. Judging from the unfolding situation, I could more or less tell what was going on here. On the armor of Pluto with Hades inside, fables were wiggling about and going on a rampage. Fable, listening to one's wife would get you tedious even when you're asleep, has begun its storytelling. Persephone sighed grandly and raised her hands up as if to conduct a concert. And right afterwards, small, musical note-like objects began floating up from the tips of her fingers. Like the introduction of a classical piece, the fable started opening up. Constellation, queen of the darkest spring, is mobilizing Underworld's probability. Hades wasn't the only ruler of Underworld. Indeed, Persephone was not queen consort, but the queen regnant, meaning these two possessed an equal amount of shares of Underworld. Hades's attributes were darkness and fire. The guardian of Olympus's night and hell was finally rousing up his true status. Constellation, father of the rich knight, is unleashing his status. For a moment there, an incredible impact force akin to my entire body being smacked around overwhelmed me. I wobbled about, my vision dizzily shaking around, but still, I raised my head to see Pluto standing up there like an incarnation of darkness and fire. Final Scenario's constellations are very dissatisfied. Final Scenario's constellations are keeping a wary eye on Father of the Rich Knight. Final Scenario's constellations are complaining about Underworld's interference. A high number of constellations are impressed by the participation of Father of the Rich Knight. Quack. Agni from Vedas was dead, while the constellations tasked with dealing with fire from both Asgard and Emperor had run off quite some time ago. As for Surya, he was using the rays of light from himself to generate something similar to flames and continue his fight that way, but half of his fable had disintegrated already. This was the power of the calamity that hundreds of constellations couldn't stop. And Hades was blocking that calamity by himself. Hades, hasn't it been a while since you completely cut loose like this? Hades roared out, and Persephone continued her vigorous conducting in sync with his roar. Fables flowing out from her hands permeated into Pluto's entire frame. This was the power of Underworld, having long been obscured under Olympus's shadow. They were finally proving themselves. Fable weapon Pluto is using the star relic Aegis shield. Constellations from Olympus also added their powers as well. Athena lent her own shield, while others sacrificed probability of their own great fables to lend their strengths. Up until now, I always thought that the constellations of the night sky weren't all that impressive. But then, I realized for the first time ever today that my thoughts should change. Many constellations are grateful for the king of Underworld's incarnation. The absolute majority of constellations are respectful of Father of the Rich Knight. The absolute majority of constellations are singing the praises of Queen of the Darkest Spring. Now that I've got to witness Hades valiantly defending against the destruction of the world, I could truly appreciate what myth was for the first time in my life. The willingness to risk his life when confronted by the world's doom. Maybe that was the epic of heroes that the first generation of Dakibus wanted to show to the constellations. Why are you so dazed like that? It's not over yet, so get your act together. I looked back to find Yu Young-hyuk and his stiff expression glaring at me. He too had been sacrificing himself for the greater cause. What would he be thinking of right now as he watched Hades? Ha 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 hey subway grasshopper man, this is my true power, keek kekekek. Kim Namwon's voice came out from Pluto's head. Ah, so he was also there, wasn't he? Constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, is enjoying Pluto's madness. Yup, definitely a couple from the original storyline. Second phase will come to an end soon. In any case, the current situation was favorable for us. The flames of the intense heat wave decreased at a rapid rate, and Hades was ably defending against that. Pluto's durability seemed more than enough for the job at hand, and the number of constellations adding their probability also was increasing bit by bit. How long passed by like that? Finally, the flames of the intense heat wave were extinguished. Second phase has concluded. Congratulations. You have safely negotiated the second shockwave of the first tail flick. We were able to withstand this phase, all because everyone worked together. If Jiang Huiwan and Han Suyong didn't try their best, if Yi Jai didn't charge forward with her battleship, if the Underworld's couple didn't arrive on time, if just one part of that was missing, then we couldn't have stopped it. The absolute majority of constellations are enjoying this great fable. Final scenarios constellations are uncomfortable with this great fable. Finally, we had managed to survive 2 out of the 3 phases. All phases of the first tail flick needed to be subjugated at the beginning in order to minimize the damage. If this was back in the original story, dozens of nebulas would have been destroyed by now and at least 1/8 of the sky crumbled away to oblivion. And some spare time to get ready for the last phase should be given to us again. Kugugugugu. DocuSSI over there. I quickly looked back after hearing Jiang Huiwan's voice and discovered something flooding out from the apocalypse dragon's tail. But the intense heatwave phase had come to an end already. This couldn't be. Metatron spoke up as if to put a voice to my thoughts. It's a lot quicker than expected. Scenario's probability is being adjusted due to the entrance of myth-grade constellations. Scenario's probability has increased the phase progression speed. Third phase will begin in 30 seconds. As if to stop the start of the phase, Hades used his status to pressure the apocalypse dragon. Even Persephone and other constellations were looking really concerned right now. My son, if the third phase got underway now, then not even Hades would be able to stop it. His attributes were darkness and fire, meaning he was not a suitable constellation to defend against the third shockwave. I asked Metatron, how long until the seal is complete? I'm not certain if it can be done in time. A faint trace of despair seemed to have dyed the Archangel's expression. He must have been in the middle of finally realizing what he had done. I shall buy us time. It was Michael who said that. He had been saving up his status up until now. Maybe he was stimulated by Hades's actions earlier, because he began unleashing all of his status and flapping his wings. He was half good and half evil. Metatron looked at the fable appearing on Michael's face and spoke up. Demon King of Salvation, I'm sure you know this already. The third shockwave can only be resisted by existences possessing the power of chaos. The shockwave began stirring in the distance. The previous 2 shockwaves we had experienced were, technically speaking, not real shockwaves, but simply the harbinger of the third wave. What we were about to face off against now was the true first tail flick itself. Metatron asked, you also have someone on your side with the power of chaos, don't you? I scanned my companions as well as other constellations. Honestly speaking, there was no point in doing that. Not even Yu Yonghyuk could use the chaos attribute. Because chaos was not an attribute but more like an anti-attribute, that was why. Now originally, chaos was not a power constellations or demon kings were permitted to enjoy. Power, a fruit of good and evil, is wiggling inside you. But then I was both a constellation and a demon king, an existence that couldn't be categorized as either. A demon king who had consumed the fruit of good and evil. It should be possible with you. I nodded my head. The nature of chaos was disorder. If it was me who went against the order of both, it'd be possible to go up against the power of chaos too. It was then someone grasped my shoulder. I can also do this. Huiwan-SSI. I saw the ring of chaos within Jiang Huiwan's eyes. Her hair, now bleached pure white, slowly danced upwards under the mysterious and ominous aura. I instantly realized what she had awakened as. Very well, let's give it a shot. I then looked up into the sky. Actually, I had been searching for a certain constellation's presence in the night sky for a while now, but unfortunately I couldn't sense it. If that guy helped us out, we'd be able to overcome this somehow. I even had a plan in mind for that too. Third phase is commencing. It seemed that it was too late now. Demon King, king of the corrupted angels, is unleashing his status. Constellation, savior of the corrupted, is unleashing his status. One existence who possessed two modifiers, Michael displayed his true power and rushed towards the forefront. Indeed, those statuses were more than enough to make him feel confident about himself. Judgment Field. His speciality that almost wrung me to death in the past began stretching out towards the shockwave of chaos. It was the wall of judgment, bestowed onto this world through the divine grace. Quack-quack-quack-quack. The so-called invincible field was easily shattered, however. Forget about defending against the wave, it couldn't even buy 1 second. Michael screamed loudly as he watched his judgment field shatter like glass. The calamity of the 89th scenario, the chaos's shockwave that had far surpassed that of the original storyline, proceeded to crush Michael's body and utterly disintegrate him. Yu Younghyuk's voice resounded out from behind me. Dodge it. It seemed that Yu Younghyuk had realized something was off. This shockwave was definitely on another realm compared to the previous two. I finished making up my mind and was about to step forward, but then Jiang Huiwen stood in my way. Huiwen SSI. Please shut up, I knew something like this would happen. Her back, turned towards me, didn't show any movement, as if she knew what I was trying to do. Yi Hyunseong's giant frame was still dangling on her back. I saw his sleeping face, having fallen into the steel-like slumber in order to protect someone. I opened my lips again. Huiwen SSI, if someone must risk their life then. Don't even try it, I'll really go crazy if you do. Fable, Demon King of Salvation, has begun its storytelling. Great Fable, Demon World Spring, has begun its storytelling. As if resonating with her emotions, the two fables began telling their stories. They were acquired through experiencing similar circumstances. Stigma Sacrifice, Will LV8 is currently active. And this stigma was acquired by going through similar situations, too. I was aware of how much this stigma hurt Jiang Huiwen. Even then, I still had to say it. If that wave isn't stopped here, Hyunseong SSI will die. I had to become more callous than anyone. There is a way to stop that. If you were me, Huiwen SSI, what would you have done? I don't want to hear it, so please. Jiang Huiwen turned around, her eyes red with tears. Yes, you do have a way, I know already. You're someone like that, Dakya SSI. You always have a damn stinking plan that only you know, and when you use it, you'll end up dying. I think you're mistaken about something. I'm not going to die. She didn't possess the skill lie detection. Now is a different story compared to in the past. Huiwen SSI, you and our other companions have changed, yes. I've chosen to do this because I believe in you. That is why, I spoke while turning my head away. Huiwen SSI, you must save me later. I used the powers of Way of the Wind and Lightning Transformation to blow her back to the rear. Kim Dokjae. The moment I greeted the shockwave rushing towards my face, I roared out in my true voice with everything I had. Surya. At the end of my roar, a train rushing forward from behind picked me up. As it was created in haste, the train looked rather bizarre, what with only its front portion existing. Let's go. As I sensed Surya's status supporting me from behind, the train set off. Great Fable, Torch that swallowed the myth, has begun its storytelling. The train used the Great Fable as its fuel to advance forward, past the fragments of fables and towards the chaos's shockwave. Quadujujuduk. Accompanied by the impact force akin to my entire body being shattered into pieces, the debris of the train flew about all over the place. Michael's half-destroyed incarnation body trapped within the storm was now looking at me. You bastard. I went past him and continued to press forward. It felt as if my consciousness was fading away. The fourth wall continued to issue warning bells, and all the fables I possessed screamed out in pain. They were shouting out in one voice that we couldn't withstand this, that we'd all die for sure. Beyond the shockwave that reverted all existence back to nothingness, I felt the apocalypse dragon's gaze land on me. You cannot stop this. I felt that gaze and smirked. You're right, I can't stop you. Well, you're not a mere life form that can be killed, but the calamity itself, after all. You're something that far exceeds constellations and demon kings. There was no way that a lone constellation could resist against such a calamity. However, I knew of another calamity of this magnitude. Constellations of Starstream have figured out your scheme and are freaking out. Final Scenarios constellations are greatly astonished by your plan. All docubus in the Bureau are looking at the scenario's probability. A scarcely believable amount of sparks exploded and went on a frenzy in the air. Simply trying to call out its name caused such a reaction. I let all the probability the constellations had gathered explode out into the open space and called out the name of a certain creature one more time. A creature that, even though they knew its true name, no one would dare to invite to their scenario. Come, black, 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 black. Beyond the shockwave, star stream, outer space could be seen. The storm of aftermaths produced by the misaligned probability was rushing in. The march of the gigantic fog of darkness began erasing the traces of stars and nebulas. I was overcome by shuddering powerful enough to nearly blank my mind, as the giant eye on the far, far side of that seemingly infinite fog fixed its gaze on this side. I witnessed that thing back in the 73rd demon world a while ago. Back then, it was merely a clone. It was a different story this time, however. Indescribable Distance is looking down on final dragon of the Book of Revelation. The outer god born within the chaos, the greater calamity that brought about the destruction of my demon world, was now approaching the Isle of Reincarnators. Episode 77, Final Dragon 5 Fin. Chapter 409, Episode 78, Climax 1. Every muscle on my body ached as if I had been thoroughly beaten up. I had blacked out for a second but regained my consciousness somehow. I vomited out fables and opened my eyes within the pitch-black empty space. I couldn't see a single thing nearby, but I already knew where I was. Indescribable Distance is glancing at you. The indescribable distance, also known as the nameless mist. I ran into this guy, clone back in the 73rd demon world. With nothing but the strength of a clone, this guy destroyed my demon world and went on to break fable-grade constellations and transcenders alike. And here I was, right inside the mouth of one calamity that I dearly wished not to meet again. Kim Dokya thought to himself, this is the only way to stop the apocalypse dragon. Right, I was wondering why you were keeping quiet until now. In order to stop the world's calamity, summon yet another one. Only someone like the regressor Yu Younghyuk might come up with such an idea. I looked at the fourth wall's messages floating up in the air and chuckled wryly. Even then, Kim Dokya simply had to do it. The effects from the storm of aftermaths still lingered in my vicinity. You have distorted far too much probability. You keep this up, and all the probabilities karma you've accumulated so far will blow up in your face. You know what that means, don't you? This was the probabilities karma that I had been accumulating until now. The retribution that constellations and docubus had warned me about. There is no fable where something precious hasn't been lost. Every large great fable found in Starstream was a story of loss. In order to awaken a hero, something must be sacrificed, while lovers and friends must lose something when trying to fulfill their love or friendship. Someone had to lose something, and with that, fables would become complete. Kim Dokya hated that. I knew that one day, I'd be paying the price for not losing out on anything. That the time to pay for twisting stories around and distorting the probability would arrive sooner or later. And that was why Kim Dokya decided to use that. Su-cha-cha-cha-cha. More lumps of fable poured out of my mouth. This wasn't because the indescribable distance attacked me. No, it was the distorted probability's fault. The distortions of the world, saved up for the purpose of summoning an outer god, was trying to eliminate me from the scenario itself. Fable, Demon King of Salvation, is continuing with its storytelling. I managed to endure only because of my fables. They continued to whisper into my ears, They said that you're the demon king of salvation. You must save people. Just like how they did to Metatron and Agars, fables were whispering to me. Fable, king of kingless world, is continuing with its storytelling. Great Fable, Demon World Spring, is continuing with its storytelling. Great Fable, Torch that swallowed the myth, is continuing with its storytelling. Even though I was inside the quaking fog of darkness, I still could sense what was happening outside. Final Dragon of the Book of Apocalypse is barring its animosity towards the indescribable distance. Indescribable distance is making its move. Thankfully, everything was unfolding according to the plan. The outer god showing up to devour me had discovered an even tastier prey, and it was now far too focused on preying on the final dragon of the Book of Revelation. The fight between calamities had begun, the final dragon versus the nameless mist. These two's mutual destruction was the hope of all the other existences. The most important thing was to buy enough time for the constellations to reorganize themselves, for those damn stars to reform the nebulas befitting their lofty titles. Damage to your incarnation body is critical. Indescribable existence's status is eating into your context of modifier. Unity between fables is weakening. Starstream is stunned by your extraordinary achievement. Your own great fable is waking up. I heard something faintly resembling a song from afar. It was a melody I heard a long time ago. I wasn't sure whether that was my mother, from my comrades, or from someone else. Except that, as I listened to that faint song, Fable, comrade of life and death, is continuing with its storytelling. I realized that I didn't want to die. Kugagagugu. One world was colliding with another. Kim Dakya, completely exposed to the apocalypse dragon's shockwave, was swallowed up by the jet-black fog of darkness. And now, it was no longer him dealing with the shockwave, but that horrifying outer god instead. The two powers born from chaos collided, and everything near their vicinity was sucked into nothingness. Constellation, guardian of Mandala, is gasping out. Thankfully, the collision location was much further away than it looked, so the companions still on the ground were spared. Complexions of most constellations were incredibly poor, after having witnessed both the apocalypse dragon and an outer god. As if all those days where they roamed the heavens like kings were nothing but illusions, calamities that not even fable-grade constellations could handle were engaging in bitter warfare. Only then did the constellations of the night sky realize the truth, that the end of the world was indeed right in front of their faces. For a certain someone, though, a person's sacrifice was a much bigger tragedy than the end of the world. Ajasiye. Yijai yelled out in sheer desperation and fired her cannons at the fog of darkness. Of course, none of the cannon shells could damage the main body of the nameless mist. One couldn't even tell where its body started and ended after all. Unfortunately, the companions were unable to control their overwhelming emotions. No, no, no. Shin Yuseung fitfully cried out as if she had been inflicted with an illness of repeating the exact same words. And as if it was resonating with her emotions, the chimera dragon spat out one breath after another in the air. The eyes of Yi Gilyong standing next to them were half blurry, unfocused. As his entire body quivered, ominous demonic aura began oozing out from him. Contract, I will. And in front of these three, another three stepped forward. Facing the horrifying calamity that they had been dreading all along, each of the companions lost their reasoning in their own ways. Some let themselves go, falling to a flood of emotions, while others managed to hold on to their broken reasoning in some elaborate manner. Yu Yonghyuk unleashed his transcended form. Han Suyong was draped by the black flame dragon, and Jiang Huiwan had opened the eyes of God-slaying. Without giving anyone a chance to stop them, the three stepped forward at the same time and they glanced at each other. Then, someone else did stop them from the front. It was Anna Croft. All of you please stop. You mustn't break away from the battlefield. Nebula Asgard, is currently commanding the battlefield. Anna Croft's voice, along with Asgard's great fable, managed to tie all three of them to their spots. Yu Yonghyok's expression crumpled unsightly. Get out of my sight. This isn't what the Demon King of Salvation wanted. What the Demon King of Salvation wanted. Han Soo-young's left arm was lit in black flames, as if there was no more need to listen here. Anna Croft quickly spoke. I've begun seeing bits of the future. The fables were now flowing within her eye of the great demon. It might be that this is because he has really done it. Anna Croft sounded genuinely impressed. She looked at the fierce battle of the two calamities taking place in the distant sky and spoke. To save this world, he really. God damn it, who cares about saving the world and shit? We want to. His sacrifice is truly noble. Do you not understand what that means? You better shut your mouth. Han Soo-young blew her top and roared out. Her scary aura managed to momentarily shut Anna Croft up. Why should Kim Dok-ya save this world? Why should that bastard sacrifice himself for such a stupid waste of time? Is this stinking world even worth saving? Her voice was cracking up from anger. It was a voice belonging to someone who had been suppressing her rage over and over again. The prophet looked at that face and listened to that voice and recalled a story from her past. The Demon King of Salvation also said the same thing once upon a time. Whether this world is worth protecting or not, one should wait and see first. Was it back during the Gourmet Association? The Demon King of Salvation once said that to her. Anna Croft knew very well what he meant back then. This world was one being ruled by Dakibus and constellations. She, too, created Zarathustras in order to change this world after all. Anna Croft raised her head and looked at the sky once more. Even as a prophet, she couldn't tell if he was still asking that question of this world. However, he's over there right now. Some fables were to be proven not by words, but through one's actions. He has met you people in this world, has he not? For the first time ever, the three's expressions changed to something quite similar to one another after hearing her. Anna Croft continued on with a cautious tone of voice. Please, have faith in me, the prophet. We need to save up our strength and then aim for the moment when the two calamities fight each other and destroy themselves. Only then will our survival be guaranteed. Prophet, you think you're the only one who can tell the future. That was when Anna Croft realized something. Han Soo-young's surrounding vicinity was overflowing with the fable of predictive plagiarism. The regressor Yu Yonghyok was studying and observing the situation without rest through his eye of sage. In the meantime, it wasn't only the prophet who could predict the future. These two also possessed insight far superior to others when it came to reading future events. Even then, they still chose to save Kim Dok-ya. Jiang Hui-wan unsheathed her sword and spoke. I don't know anything about the future. However, I do know this. You said that you want to save this world. It's the same for me, too. Her determination manifested in the whitish flames billowing on the sword of judgment. That man is the world I wish to save. At the end of those words, all three of them dashed into the air. Not the probability of the great fable, and not even the pressure from a nebula could stop them from leaving. Anna Croft urgently reached out, but by then they were already soaring towards the distant heavens. The thing that stopped them, though, was not a nebula nor probability. Han Soo-young was the first one to discover that thing. What the hell, son of a... Kagagugu. The equilibrium of the heavens was collapsing under the continued battle of the two calamities. The new problem had to do with the crumbling balance of the broken scale invading into this world. Isn't that? One of the constellations muttered out. Something hidden within the fog of darkness, blanketing the skies, wiggled and began separating itself. Not content with pressuring the apocalypse dragon, the indescribable distance, aka the nameless mist, had begun creating a clone from itself. A sickly yellow eye of terror revealed itself among the fog of darkness. Shin Yuseung's shoulders began trembling non-stop, as if a nightmare of the past managed to creep back into her consciousness. She had seen that eye before. Incarnations who saw that eye would fail to hold onto their minds and eventually transform into creatures of the outer world. On that day, all existences of the industrial complex were rendered completely powerless in front of that calamity. However, there was someone here who remembered that day's events quite differently from her. It's slightly smaller than that day, I see. It was Chiak Junjeong. Episode 78, Climax 1 Fin. Chapter 410, Episode 78, Climax 2. Chiak Junjeong unsheathed his sword as he stepped forward. His fables, tempered on the Isle of Reincarnators, wrapped around him and rippled about like real muscles. Let us get going, small transcender. Kyejios climbed up on Chiak Junjeong's shoulder. They once worked together to fight the indescribable distance in the past. The latter leapt up towards the heavens, and Kyejios' lightning transformation danced on his blade next. And as the bright, pure white electrical current enveloped Chiak Junjeong's figure, he began glittering like a god of lightning. I, Chiak Junjeong, have been waiting for this day. A splendid status revealed itself. The enemy that his sword, used to cut apart mountains and the seas, couldn't cut was now right before him. He trained hard to perfect the incomplete fourth sword for this very moment. In order to fight against that sheer, immeasurable emptiness, he spent countless hours creating a sword skill. And this was the result. His fable, condensed tightly until it was almost ready to burst, was ignited, and Kyejios' electrical current violently spun around in their vicinity. Constellations on the ground all looked up. One constellation and one transcender. As if to mock these two statuses, the clone of the indescribable distance opened its maws wide towards them, and just before the open jaw of the fog of darkness swallowed up the starlight. The fourth law. Light gushed out from Chiak Junjeong's sword. Fourth sword that beheads the emptiness. The center of the fog slowly split apart. Just like the belly of a beast being sliced open, something began leaking out from that exposed center. The yellowing eye protruding from the fog of darkness began to disintegrate while spewing out fables. Many constellations cannot take their eyes away from the martial glory displayed by Goryeo's first sword. The jaws of many constellations have fallen at this unbelievable spectacle. All the constellations on the ground were astonished by what they saw. Even if it was just a clone, their opponent was still the indescribable distance, the cleaner of star stream, and the calamity that devoured all distorted probability. The calamity, widely known as undefeatable, was cut in half by Chiak Junjeong. No one even managed to clearly catch the shape of that sword strike. Only Yu Yonghyuk managed to recognize that attack. Even the man who previously sliced a star in half looked utterly stunned right now. The will-formed blade. The power to cut the world down with nothing but one's own determination, the pinnacle reputedly only reachable through training in martial arts. And Chiak Junjeong had reached that lofty height after becoming a constellation. There is no existence that cannot be cut down by my blade. Standing within the exploding light show, Chiak Junjeong watched the scattering fog and felt the sense of release wash over him. Just how long did he endure just to be able to cut that thing? That ecstasy of the moment when he stepped into the realm of empty-mindedness and his will itself became the sword. The four-sword styles, fourth sword that beheads the emptiness, was the cumulation of all the martial arts he had mastered. He looked in Yu Yonghyuk's direction and shouted out, "Now go, descendants, go and bring Kim Dok-jae." Unfortunately, he didn't get to finish what he was saying. An incredible impact force from behind managed to wreck his entire incarnation body. He fell like a meteor and crashed deeply into the ground. As his vision rocked unstably, he forced himself to look up, and that's when he realized what had happened to him. Someone began muttering near him. Oh dear Lord, Star Stream might be finished at this rate. He couldn't understand it. Chiak Junjeong felt his body tremble uncontrollably. But how? I cut it down just now, so how? As if what happened a moment was all a joke, The giant eye in the sky was still looking down on him. There was more than one clone. So many, in fact, the whole sky seemed to be covered by them. Clones of the indescribable distance, dozens upon dozens of them, were descending to the ground in order to devour every living thing down below. Uak. Historical figure-grade constellations, overcome by terror, began running to the other side of the horizon. Unfortunately, the calamity also flooded in from that side as well. Siarararak. Fangs rising up from within the fog crushed the incarnation bodies of the constellations like the soft pulp of a fruit. There was no place to run nor hide now. Although slightly better than dealing with the apocalypse dragon shockwaves, this situation was just as despairing, nonetheless. Everyone calmed down. You all saw it, didn't you? We can fight back against this creature. Dionysus shouted until his voice turned hoarse, but constellations simply couldn't fight together. Damn it. Constellations from Olympus had spent a considerable amount of their statuses while enduring against the two previous shockwaves and couldn't display their usual prowess now, and even Underworld had used up far too much of its probability and was searching for the right fable. At least, Uriel and the Black Flame Dragon were still putting up a good fight. Get lost. I said get the hell away from me, you stinking bastards. Yu Yonghyuk, Han Soo-yong, and Jiang Hui-wan unleashed their statuses, their backs pressed against each other. They were planning to continue fighting against the fog of darkness and rush towards where Kim Dak-ya had disappeared into as soon as an opening was created. However, no such gap opened up for them. At this rate, they would be wiped out before they even began rescuing him. God damn it, isn't there anyone else? Isn't there any other friends of Kim Dak-ya still left somewhere? No matter how much Han Soo-yong racked her brain, she couldn't come up with anyone that could help. Both the statuses of the Black Flame Dragon and Uriel were gradually declining now. Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is glaring at scribe of heaven. Constellation, abyssal Black Flame Dragon, says he still can't use the right hand of the void destruction. The fog of darkness had enveloped the Isle of Reincarnators, which was about the same as it having finished its preparation to devour this place whole. It was around then when the specks of light akin to a car's headlights shone from the distance. Along with loud screeching, something arrived by their side after breaking past the deflagration. A vehicle rather familiar to the members of Kim Dak-ya Company appeared from beyond the choking dust. It'll get rather troublesome if you get injured here. You still have 3 more adverts you need to shoot for me after all. The door to the X-Class Ferragini opened, and the gray-haired middle-aged man waved his hand with a smile. He wore a pink-colored polo shirt with images of pineapples etched on it, plus a torn pair of jeans. Han Soo-yong saw his outrageous fashion sense that simply didn't match the current battlefield, and her jaw fell to the ground. Mass production type maker. Several constellations fighting against the calamity began muttering to each other after hearing her. Mass production type maker, is he a strong constellation? No, that geezer won't be of much help. I think I've heard about him before. Blinded by coins, he continues to pump out trashy fables. Han Soo-yong stared at that mass production type maker. He was supposed to be a fable-grade constellation, but contrary to his rank, the status she could feel was nothing to write home about. The mass production type maker chuckled good-naturedly. Hoo-ha, it seems that I come across as not all that reliable. His relaxed observation prompted Thor to stop chugging wine down his throat and shout back, "Oi, Mr. Steady, since you came, hurry and lend us a helping hand. We urgently need any help we can find, even from a geezer." But I didn't come here to fight. Then why the hell did you even come here for? Well, I was thinking of sponsoring some coins, you see. You mad geezer, what good will that do right now? Constellations couldn't hold their anger back and shouted out. If you showed up to spout nonsense, then get the hell away from here. A stinking old man blinded by coins. Strangely enough, the mass production type maker didn't show any signs of cowering. It was at that moment Han Soo-young recalled a certain conversation she had with Kim Dak-ya in the past. While she was glancing at the mass production type maker, chatting to Dakibus outside the recording booth, she asked him, "Hey, Kim Dak-ya, just who is that constellation anyway? He doesn't seem all that strong to me. Why are those Dakibus groveling before him like that?" Kim Dak-ya replied, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Because he's got a lot of coins." Like Kim Dak-ya back then, the mass production type maker was grinning brightly right now. "I can't understand you young ones. Why do you all dismiss coins like that? Who cares about those consumables?" Along with a spinning noise, a coin popped up on top of the mass production type maker's palm. It was just one single coin. "Now look closely. Does this coin look like nothing more than consumable to you? Haven't you ever wondered why Starstream uses these coins as the standard trading unit? Don't you find that strange? What bullshit are you trying to say now?" While staring at the clones that had encroached right before his nose, the mass production type maker spoke up. "Let me give you a hint. Everything within Starstream is created through fables. In that case, what about coins then? Is this the sign of senility? I'm busy, so stop talking to me." Constellations focused on shooting out their magical energy at the space around them, as if they no longer wanted to hear an old man's ramblings. Han Soo-young, however, continued to listen even when still trapped in this urgent situation. And goosebumps broke out all over her skin. It was as exactly as the mass production type maker had said. Everything in Starstream was a fable. In that case, why was the trading unit of Starstream not fables, but coins instead? Sujujajut. An enormous amount of probability was welling up all round the mass production type maker. And as he was bathed in the influence of that probability, his own status was rising up explosively. That gobsmacking rate of increase shocked the constellations of both good and evil, and they all looked at the mass production type maker. A very old fable has begun its storytelling. The mass production type maker, he too, was a constellation pursuing his own version of a single story. In that case, what was the black square he was pursuing after? What rules this world is neither good nor evil, it's capital. He then chucked that coin high up in the air. Yu Yonghyuk saw it, so did Han Soo-young and Jiang Hui-won, but none of them saw how much was written on that coin. "And I possess more coins than anyone in Starstream." More specifically, they would have believed whatever amount was claimed to be written on it. If one wanted to create a miracle like that with coins, how much would one need to spend? Someone has spent a lot of coins. Fable materialism has begun its storytelling. A short while later, a deafening boom resounded out from the other side of the sky where the coin had disappeared to. Accompanied by the ripping sound, a doorway whirling about opened up there. It was a gate. A one-way gate has been generated. The gate that only the Dakibus and the Bureau could open up was actually opened by a mere constellation. Starstream's Bureau is looking at the probability of the applicable scenario. Summoning has begun. Several humanoid shapes began appearing beyond the gate itself. With a relaxed face belonging to a holiday maker, the mass production type maker shrugged his shoulders. "Oh, by the way, you guys were right about one thing. I'm terrible at fighting." Blinding rays of light exploded from the other side of the gate. The old man put a pair of sunglasses on as if he'd been expecting that and continued on. "Instead, I can bring a few friends who are very good at that by doing this." Some people were being summoned to the battlefield through the gate. The first one to recognize them was Yu Yonghyuk. "Master." The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint and Transcenders were flying out of the gate now. There were several other familiar faces among the group beside her, too, such as the one invincible fist, Yu Hosiang. One of the most powerful beings on the Isle of Reincarnators had entered this scenario in order to lend them aid. The reason for the Breaking the Sky Sword Saints' belated arrival must have had something to do with persuading them to come here. However, Yu Yonghyuk's expression didn't improve even then. Will they be enough to stop this calamity? There were dozens of Calamity's clones, each so powerful that Fable-grade constellations couldn't even deal with a single one. No matter how powerful the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint and Yu Hosiang were, this enemy was not something a group of transcenders could overcome. But then, there was one more familiar face right at the end of the descending transcenders. Seriously now, should have helped us get here from the get-go, you know. It was Jang Hayoung. A few companions shouted towards her, calling her over. She smiled embarrassedly and waved her hand back. Sorry about being so late, I was trying to persuade someone. Don't persuade. Jang Hayoung couldn't continue on, however, because the entrance of new, powerful beings caused the clones of the indescribable distance to change the direction of their attacks. Nervousness quickly dyed her expression as she watched the outer god approach her location. Jang Hayoung had seen those things back in the demon world. She knew very well that the current her couldn't even deal with a single clone. That was with only her own powers, though. Right in the next instance, a golden aura exploded out from her figure. An incredible amount of status was being unleashed with her as its center. Her golden locks spread out like waves, and a slender golden headband appeared above her pale smooth forehead. And then, a beautiful golden-colored fur coat covered her entire body. She slowly opened her eyes to reveal the swirling, ominous aura of golden gaze, fiery eyes. Constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, is narrowing his eyes. Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is surprised silly. Constellation, Goryeo's first sword, is sighing out. All neutral-type constellations can't hide their astonishment. Everyone present recognized the owner of that status. It was impossible not to. Jang Hayoung extended her hand out, and the world's heaviest staff found itself in her grip in the next moment. Boundlessly arrogant and aloof, eyes glared at the azure sky, and every cloud in the world trembled all at the same time. Go and rescue Kim Dakya. Those words were not spoken by Jang Hayoung. Constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, has incarnated into the scenario. Episode 78, Climax 3 Fin.